Welcome to Armchair Expert, Experts on Expert. I'm Dan Shepard. I'm joined by Lily Padman and Michael Weekly.
Hello.
This guest, Susan Morrison.
This was so fun. This was such a fun listen back.
Was it?
Yes.
So she is the articles editor at The New Yorker. She has a new book out right now, Lorne, The Man Who Invented Saturday Night Live. This is like a crazy fun, juicy history of Saturday Night Live.
It is, of SNL and of Lorne Michaels, and we get all these like fun stories, and it's just cool. And he's an institution.
The Wizard of Oz.
Exactly.
He has a lot
Very
of monikers.
mysterious, very mysterious. And we get a little deep dive. I thought this was incredibly enjoyable.
It's really cool because she's known him for decades.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, this is a really, really fun one. Her other books are Spy High and 30 Ways of Looking at Hillary. So feel free to check those out too. But Lorne is fantastic. I encourage everyone to read it. Please enjoy Susan Morrison.
He's an armchair expert. He's an armchair expert. He's an armchair expert. He's an armchair expert.
Her daughter is Adam Scott's assistant.
No.
Yeah. Isn't that fun?
Yeah.
I'm sure you're only getting glowing reviews of Naomi and Adam, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Love it.
How did she end up with that job?
I'm trying to remember. I think a friend at WME knew that he was looking for someone for the
Yeah.
second season of Severance.
Uh-huh.
And so, they just really clicked.
That's good.
And so what's really fun is now to watch the second season with her, because she'll tell you like, oh yeah, and the goats ran off there.
Oh,
and this is when we were,
fun.
John Turturro was like crying because it was so fucking cold,
Oh my God, that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's fun to have that kind of commentary.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh,
the
cool.
inside scoop. Well, we send Adam Scott angry voice memos after every episode. That's kind of our participation in
that's
it.
fun.
We yell at him for cliffhangers. Why is this taking so long? Are you guys shooting this
Right.
show 3 hours a
Right.
week? Why isn't
Yeah.
there another season?
Well, I saw Adam and Ben on some talk show, and someone said, when's season 3? And I think Ben said, like, 2035.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
It's become one of those an IQ test where it's like the gap between year 1 and
And you keep
2
adding.
was 3, and then it's got to
Right.
be 6, and then we go up to...
Yeah,
Right,
exactly.
right.
Susan, where are you from?
Tough to answer that, because when I was a kid, my dad worked for IBM, which meant that we moved every 4 years. So I was born in New Jersey and lived in Poughkeepsie and Denver and Stamford, Connecticut. And, now I've lived in my apartment in New York for 40 years. So I think that makes me feel like I'm a New Yorker.
For how long?
40.
40,
Yeah, that qualifies.
I have
You know.
a similar, I wonder if you attribute it to your childhood. We moved so much
Yes.
that I have only lived in 30 years in LA. I lived in one single apartment for 10 years, then I lived in a house for 16,
Yeah.
and now we're here, and I just don't ever want to
No,
leave.
exactly. I think I will never move, because
Yeah.
my whole childhood was putting things in those Neptune moving boxes
Yes.
and unpacking them. And I always wanted to spare my kids that.
Did you get psychotic about your room? Like I did. It's like wherever we went, at least my little bubble could be the same. And if
Exactly.
someone altered my bubble, I was irrationally upset.
No, mine was the same weird shade of pink. I had a canopy bed.
Yeah. Oh, the
And I
dream.
had little China cats. But yeah, but I do think that that's why. I think you want permanence.
Yes. And you're dropping in every 4 years to a totally different social
school.
setting and culture and vibe.
Yeah.
Were you good at meshing?
Well, I mean, I think about some things that were, I'm not one of those people who ever overuses the word trauma.
Yeah.
I frown on that.
Yeah.
But I remember when we moved to Colorado, I fell out of a tree and broke my arm, and my arm was kind of taped up inside my clothes. And in my first week in my new school, some girl I didn't know came up to me on the playground and kicked me really hard and said, I think it's awful that you're pretending to only have one arm.
Oh my God.
And it was just like... So, those things, you're like the new kid and you're the weird kid with one arm.
Yeah.
But I think it's made me really resilient and adaptable as an adult. Do you find that?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I want to go back to the little girl. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff happening in that move, which is someone feigning a disability, like needs to be policed by the social hierarchy. There's something fascinating. It's not just that you had a broken arm and she's pissed you were getting attention.
No, she thought I was pretending that I lost my arm.
Which would be disrespectful to someone who had
I think
lost
she might
it.
have even said, I know someone who lost an arm. Maybe like
wow.
a grandfather in the war or something. I don't know.
And she was so young to be this like very big justice.
We're talking
police.
8 years old.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think it's an instinct. That's what I'm arguing. I think there's
Right.
something like very primitive about us being social primates, whereas like if
Interesting.
someone's pretending to be infirmed and they're not, that's deception. I don't know. That's fascinating reaction to come up and kick a girl.
Kick you right in the shins. And yeah, so the whole new kid thing was a really regular thing for me.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it was painful, and I'm sure I had lonely stretches that I've blocked.
Yeah.
But I definitely feel like there are times in my adult life when I know this is why I'm good at this, and this is why I'm good at that.
Right. I can walk in and be around
Yeah.
strangers
Yeah.
and
Do podcasts.
exist. Yeah, podcast. What's your road to the New Yorker?
My first job in the grown-up world was working for Lorne Michaels. I was
it was?
23. My mom had just died. I had been living in England, working for the Times of London. I moved back to America because my mom was sick. Took care of her for a month, and then she died of cancer. And I was just like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And some of my college friends from the Harvard Lampoon brought me into the city the day after my mom's funeral and introduced me to Jim Downey, who is the great, long-serving head writer of SNL.
Mm-hmm.
And Lorne, this was during the period when he wasn't at SNL. He had a 5-year hiatus in the 80s, and he was producing this primetime show called The New Show, which was his first spectacular public failure.
Yeah, yeah.
But so I got a job working in for the writers in that as a researcher.
Yeah.
That only lasted about 9, 10 episodes, but I was young, and it cemented relationships with all these amazing comedy people.
Yeah.
So that after that, I knew I wanted to go into journalism. I got a job at Vanity Fair, but I stayed friends with all those people, and it especially served me. I feel like the real crucible part of my career was starting Spy magazine in the 80s with Kurt Anderson and Graydon Carter. And I don't know if that's something that traveled
Forgive my
out here.
ignorance. What was Spy's angle?
Spy magazine was kind of modeled on Private Eye, the British satiric weekly. And we, the 80s were a time when fat cats and Wall Street guys were just running the world.
Yeah.
Donald Trump was ascendant.
Yeah.
And so we did this magazine, we called ourselves, the underdogs, biting the ankles of the overdogs. We reported Trump's bankruptcies. We went after the Times, and we had a column on CAA and Mike Ovitz. I mean, we really did a lot of funny and disrespectful reporting.
So it had a sense of humor.
It was really
but it wasn't
funny.
Satire. It was
Right, it was
actual
reporting.
reporting with a little comedic edge.
It was really really reporting, and it was really funny, and it took us all by surprise by being like a big sensation. Like we kind of thought this was going to be maybe something with
underground thing.
Yeah, but it suddenly was popular, and it launched. Most of the people who did that, we did it for like 6 years, starting in '86. Have kind of run the media now.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's where I kind of learned everything.
It is weird, right? When you get to an age where all these people you started with, you are all kids, and you look around and you go, oh my God, it happened.
No, and now you bump into someone, like Walter Isaacson or somebody, goes like, yeah, we've all had a great ride, And,
Was he at Spy?
No, he wasn't, but I
Oh,
knew
he was
him
just in that
from
circle.
that circle. Of
How wild.
people.
How cool.
It is kind of nice.
Yeah.
I have a fantasy about New York in the 80s because it's very Billy Joel. It's very everyone at Elaine's was so knocked out.
Yeah,
Coke,
Right.
limousines, that whole
Yeah.
is my fantasy.
That is definitely what it was like. And we were there. We were all these like kids from, well, not kids, we were young, but, we were all public school kids. We were all from outside of New York. We had that nose pressed up against the glass, like trying to figure this out. And yes, it was a real time of uptown, downtown. Uptown were all these socialites in like poof dresses.
Right.
Going to, cancer galas and everything. It was the time of Tom Wolfe's, social x-rays, Bonfire of the Vanities. But downtown, it was this, it was area and these nightclubs that were, I guess they were like really creative and sort of cool, but also kind of like really pretentious and arty.
Sure,
you know?
sure.
So
Yeah.
the targets were everywhere you looked.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
and
What a colorful
It
array.
was fun.
Yeah. I certainly like New York of today, but I also
Yeah.
went there in the 80s with my mom when I was a kid, and it was a very dangerous feeling.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, walking through Times Square, you're like holding mom's hand extra tight. But yeah, I do miss how colorful and segmented, and you cross 4 blocks and it's like everyone's now this way.
Right.
And that was
Yeah.
fun. You're like almost time traveling through.
Oh, I love that concept because I sometimes think about walking around New York City. I mean, you get a little bit of that here with all the wonderful old signage and everything, but I like the idea of walking through a city as time travel.
Yeah,
Which is so thrilling. And you can still like walk into Katz's Deli on Ludlow Street and you feel like you're in 1962.
Yeah. Or just
And-
being in the village and there's the one road that's got a bend in it. And you're like, oh, God, how old
Yeah,
is that
Manhattan
road?
Street, yeah,
Is
the
that what it
Barrow,
is?
yeah.
Yeah, it's
That's
very, historic. When do you start at the New Yorker?
Okay, right. So Spy. After Spy, I edited this weekly called the New York Observer, which was also kind of kind of sarcastic and had an attitude, and we sort of made fun of people. And then in 1997, when Tina Brown ran the New Yorker, she hired me, and so I've been there since then. A lot of people don't realize that when the New Yorker turns 100 this year, just like SNL turns 50. So and I'm fascinated by. There's a lot of common ground between the two institutions that people aren't that aware of.
Tell me. I mean, first of all, they're implicitly New York, right?
Yeah,
they're
they're New York things.
Yeah.
But first I'll say, so when Harold Ross started the magazine 100 years ago, he called it the Comic Weekly. It was this roaring 20s jazz age,
Right.
very fizzy publication with a lot of fun and gossip.
yeah.
And that's the part of the New Yorker. And when Tina hired me, she knew that I had that kind of impulse and I wanted to make things entertaining. And before her, William Shawn had been editing The New Yorker for some decades, and it had kind of, it did a lot of quality stuff, but there were sort of jokes about how it published like a 5-part series on grain, things like that.
Right.
And so she really wanted to enliven it, and that
I
was
got a little
right up my
academic
alley. So
Yeah.
I edit just the straight up humor pieces, but also the nonfiction writers that I edit and have brought in are all just people with real voice who are really
Do you have a
fun to
relationship,
read.
I imagine, with Sedaris and a lot of these?
Yeah, I know him. I edit him sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's great.
Yeah, what did I just was his the Pope piece in New Yorker, or was that somewhere else? Did you read that?
Yes,
Touching the cloth or
yes,
something?
about going when the Pope had all those comedians there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was what a wild event for the comedy world that was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's
Preposterous.
so cool that the Pope did that. I mean, it's weird. Like, there's something that I can't really wrap my head around of why. But I think maybe he just loves
Comedy?
comedians, and he's not able to like really exercise that.
Yeah, I can't figure out his
Interesting.
angle.
I mean,
Well, I have a theory. about
yeah,
it.
let's hear
hit us.
it.
I think that he just must be much savvier and worldlier than we think. And I mean, this sort of goes hand in hand with like why SNL is still so important after 50 years, even when it has seasons that are lackluster. I feel like comedy has become this kind of, it's almost like we're in a comedy glut. Like you're riding the subway or here, I guess, looking at billboards, and like it didn't used to be that every advertisement was funny. Like humor is just the sort of the language that we all speak in, and it used to be more of a cordoned off thing, but now you kind of have to be funny to even be able to get by in the world. And I
Yeah.
think
That's true.
that the Pope probably thought this is the way in, and if you get, if you get the comedians on your side, you're kind of winning the war. I mean,
Yes.
it's something that Trump completely doesn't understand because he has the worst sense of humor of anyone I've ever heard about.
Right, he doesn't.
But
he
then he's so outrageous that it is funny. Like that, there's this
But you're
weird,
laughing at him.
You're
not
laughing
with
at
him.
him, but I don't know if it's
Yeah.
worked to some extent inadvertently.
Like he has a playground sense of humor. He makes fun of people and humiliates them, and people think that's funny.
I think the way I would refine it is, like, I don't think he's got a sophisticated sense of humor or even a good sense of humor, but he's a pure showman.
Yes.
I mean, he's
Yes.
all show
That
business.
is right.
Yes.
Like, I remember one week when I was spending the whole week at SNL, Alec Baldwin got arrested for, not the Rust thing, but he got arrested for punching a guy over a parking place.
Sure.
And I remember being there in Lorne's office when the text came through and everyone was like, oh God. And it was also kind of funny because, it wasn't that serious. But, and then cut to Trump at a press conference, because those were the years when he was railing against Baldwin all the time because he
hates
was
him,
playing him.
Yeah.
So a reporter said to Trump, did you hear about Alec Baldwin getting arrested? And Trump just kind of gives this like half smile. And he goes, I wish him luck. And I remember watching that with Lorne Michaels. And like Lorne just said, God, Trump just has like the exact right showbiz instinct to know how to respond.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, he does.
It's good.
it was underplayed, but
Yeah.
it was funny.
The timing of this is perfect because, as you just said, 50-year anniversary of SNL. And I guess I didn't realize that you had worked for him. That makes a lot of sense. But I'm imagining you're just a humongous fan of the show and impressed with how this thing continues to.
I am a fan of it, but I wouldn't say that's really why I got into writing the book. I mean, it was after the 40th. I thought that show was really interesting and moving. And, as I said, I stayed friends with a lot of those people over these years. And frankly, for years, I just heard all these different people I knew, mostly in the writer's room, kind of complaining about Lorne or just saying, oh, and he did this and he cut that and like he's this way. And not, in that kind of exasperated way that you do about, so when I went on Lawrence O'Donnell's show, he said, this book is like a workplace comedy. It's a little bit like The Office, right?
Yeah.
So people complain about each other. And so I knew that he was mercurial and that they were all like obsessed with him and always trying to figure him out. But I didn't think that the wider world knew that about him.
Right.
So I thought, this would be a good book. And so it wasn't out of pure fandom. It was more just like as an editor, I thought that's a good story. And also Lorne Michaels is someone who's kind of been hiding in plain sight for 50 years. Who's been there.
He's such a mystery.
Doesn't talk to the press. And the inscrutability has kind of worked for him, both as a management tool and as
He's
a
like
guy.
Anna Wintour. I put them in the same category.
He's the Anna Wintour.
Like they are both like elusive and huge figures that have major
frightened people.
impact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's funny because it's tied into the Pope. Because the one thing I wanted to say about the Pope thing was like, I meant both times I would go because I personally want the story. Like, oh yeah, I went to the Vatican, met the Pope. And then also my other part of my mind being like, look how insane this status thing is. Like, you still buy into it. Like, one person has a given status where they just summons 100 of the most prominent people who have their own status, and everyone shows up.
And they bought their own plane tickets.
Yes, and if you're the aliens watching from above, you're like, that guy can do that. That's just so fascinating to me. That even you could be in on it and also be inclined to play along.
Yeah.
So then, yes, Lorne also has this really unique Wizard of Oz. When all the people you interview, like there's these very common comparisons that come up about him, right? Like the Godfather.
Obi-Wan Kenobi, Mr. Ripley. I mean, some of them have even compared him to Trump.
Yeah, but I would also put him in the George Washington category a little bit, which is he didn't talk.
Yeah.
And he was surrounded by all these people that wouldn't shut the fuck up. So they just assumed he was so smart because he didn't even feel compelled to brag, and they couldn't understand that. Like in his quietness, people just projected a lot.
Exactly.
And yes, Lorne is obviously incredibly gifted. And also he's not superhuman, but I do think he's taken on this kind of superhuman quality.
I think that's true. Part of it is that when these people come to him, when he plucks them from obscurity, they tend to be, 22 or 23. I mean, think about like Bill Hader coming from Oklahoma, where his previous showbiz job had been being like a PA on Iron Chef or something. People that come to New York, they're suddenly, I mean, they're not making a hell of a lot of money, but they're, they're on television. And so Lorne has kind of opened the whole world to them, and they invest him with this power. It's not just some of it is like a daddy thing, but some of it is also like, oh my God, this man changed my life.
Yeah.
And Conan O'Brien said to me, this is such a great, everyone concurs with this, that when you work for SNL, whether you're as a writer or in the cast, it basically takes 2 weeks from going from like insanely grateful to being like, put out that how are you ever going to get out of these golden handcuffs? This kind of entitled thing. And I think that, Lorne just, he's made so much happen for them. I mean, he told me once that there's a real distinction in his social world between like all the cast and all the people that he's hired and his friends who came into the business on their own steam, like Paul Simon, Steve Martin.
Yeah.
Like they don't owe him everything, so it's an easier relationship.
Yes.
Yeah.
And someone who had the experience, which is come to LA, go to the Groundlings because I know that's a feeder for Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
Singularly focused on being good there so I can get to Saturday Night Live. The only goal is Saturday Night Live.
Wow.
So I was just talking
It's a
with another
monopoly, right?
actor. Yes.
Yeah.
It's so unique in that if you audition for Oliver Stone and you don't get it, that's okay. The Coen brothers are going to cast a movie in 2 weeks and you got a shot there. And then so-and-so is going to cast a movie. But Saturday Night Live is the only option if that's what your mind was set on. And if you don't get the audition or you get it and you don't get made, or he opens up the kingdoms, like it's just, I think there's so rarely a singular focus goal in show business. Generally, you're like, I want to act. I want to.
But he's the only gatekeeper.
That's it.
One of the great things that Tina Fey said to me about him is, considering when he kind of came to power, if that is the phrase to use with him, he never got that 80s disease that, and having been in journalism in the 80s, I know what she means of wanting to boast about being like an insane workaholic. I mean, I remember, you'd read stories about Jeff Katzenberg and Barry Diller, and they'd say, I get up at 4 a.m. and I'm with my trainer for 90 minutes. Then, my stock guy comes and I sleep 3 hours a day. And I mean, he never had that
I haven't seen my kid in 4 years.
show-offy thing. From the very beginning, he's had this almost European kind of fixation on leisure. He's always made the show's schedule correspond to the vacation schedule of New York private schools.
Oh, really?
He makes sure he takes a lot of time off in swanky locales, and he tells all of his people to do the same. And, aside from opening the professional world to these people, he has this kind of Henry Higgins thing with them. He likes to teach them how to live the good life. He doesn't want them to be killing themselves and staying up all night. And that one of the things that was fun about tracking his life over 50 years is the quality of that advice has kind of changed as he's become more of a mogul-y kind of guy. Like in the 70s, it would be like, rotate your drug use, rotate your drugs. But now it's sort of, it's a number of different people told me, when you're buying an apartment, he'll say two things. First of all, buy an apartment or get an apartment that's more expensive than you think you can afford.
Okay.
Because then you come home at the end of an exhausting day and you'll say, who lives here? I live here. And then the other thing that he says to these people, he says, you know what's better than 10-foot ceilings? 12-foot ceilings.
Wow.
So whose boss tells them that, right?
Yeah.
So
When they're making $7,500 a week.
Yeah.
So
In
anyway,
Manhattan.
he's aware that and this is another great Lorne phrase, they're first generation famous, meaning that their parents back in Peoria aren't going to be able to answer their questions about should I get a Lexus or a Tesla.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, so let's maybe just start with where Lorne comes from. Because I do wonder if part of this, his being inoculated to that 80s trope of I'm a workaholic, I wonder if there's any Canadian in the mix, like if that's part of it.
His personal demeanor, his personal humor is that kind of Canadian self-deprecating thing. Although
Yeah.
I do say at some point in the book, he is that way, and yet he's under no illusion that anybody takes his self-deprecation seriously.
Right.
He
But-
knows his place.
Yeah.
Oh, the Steve Martin quote you put in there is so great. It's like Dave Letterman is truly self-deprecating.
He doesn't think he's any good.
doesn't think he's any good.
Yeah.
Lorne does not suffer from this issue.
Yeah.
But, Lorne, in talking about his childhood, he'll say, Canada's like a really boring place. You have to make your own fun. You have to, it's harder to kind of, find a stimulating life. And he was always had his eye south of the border, always had his eye on, he said it was like growing up next to Imperial Rome, But I think that you're right that there is a kind of a Canadian mildness.
Yeah.
That, the thing about wanting to take his leisure seriously, that's connected to sort of the way he views comedy. Like he doesn't like comedy that he calls sweaty. Like I wish I had room to have a glossary on the back of this book because there's so much terminology.
Yeah.
And that means like sweaty comedy is like comedy that's trying too hard, that's pushing
Desperate.
and needy. And it's sort of, like he'll always say the art of producing is not leaving any fingerprints, like making it look easy. He'll say Fred Astaire never grunted while he danced. So that's sort of part of his work philosophy.
But his grandparents owned a movie theater,
Yeah.
where that's a unique experience
Yes.
where the family has declared we value show business.
That's right.
You say in the book,
Yeah.
his grandparents would talk about all these actors, Humphrey Bogart, on a level where he would think they might know these people.
One of my favorite things about that story, and I don't know if he even made this connection, but when he was telling me that they'd be talking about Spencer Tracy and he thought those people were his friends, I thought how amazing that this guy would grow up to be someone who routinely just talks about Mick and Jack and Paul.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
One of the fun things about writing this guy's biography is that all the years before he got onto the world stage and became the Lorne Michaels that we know, it seemed to me that like almost every experience he had, kind of you could draw a line between that and the producing skills he would later use at SNL. Like even when he was a tiny boy watching Your Show of Shows or, Phil Silvers or whatever with his grandmother who had this movie, it was a movie savant. She knew about showbiz. He told me that she would show him, like they'd be looking at Jack Benny on TV and he loved Jack Benny because of his underplayed, low-key thing. But she would say, so he's really old now. He started out as a young man in vaudeville. Then he got older, his hair turned white, and he was a star of radio. But then television came along, a visual medium. So all these guys had to dye their hair black, or if you're George Burns, wear a ridiculous rug.
Yeah.
So, but even you imagine like tiny Lorne thinking about this like Darwinian aspect of showbiz eras shifting and moving
And
into
having
the
to
next
adjust.
one. And that's really the key to how he's been able to keep it going for 50 years, like paying attention to when the music changes and when the technology changes. And
That's the
Yeah.
So
impossible
interesting.
quality that he
Yeah.
has is keeping it relevant and fresh, which seems impossible for 50 years.
I know.
But I would
yeah.
say even like his access to, so he had a rich aunt and uncle.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I think is interesting if you think about his, people tease him about being, name droppy and starfuckery and stuff.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to say that?
Oh,
Of course.
yeah. You can
Yeah.
say anything.
Is that, and like when he was a little boy, his family, I think, was sort of on the drabber side. His mom was a kind of classic, like Philip Roth, Jewish mother.
Yep.
Really breathed down his neck.
The
And
father
his
escaped her.
father was a furrier, and then he died when Lorne was 14. But he had this aunt and uncle lived down the street who are in a fancier part of Toronto. They were very rich.
They have a swimming pool in their house.
Yeah, there's swimming pool.
In their house. Inside.
Inside?
In a town
Indoor?
first. It just recently sold for $18 million.
You're a
Really?
good reader, man. So they were
wow.
rich and glamorous. Lorne, kind of like, I wish I were in that family.
How could you
Yes.
not?
And then
Yes.
and when Lorne's dad died, they really stepped in. And and Uncle Pep, great name, really took Lorne under his wing and taught him everything about business and the world. And
Wow.
I think that is also the key to why Lorne extends himself that way to his own young charges. He wants to show them how to do it.
Yes, such close proximity to wealth, coveting that, seeing that the attention in the family is show business movie stars. Like we all want to be the star of our family first.
Right.
And it's like if you see the things that are valued and then also getting kind of an education of how to move in an upscale thing as
Right.
later in life he'll have to do, acting like you've been there,
Yeah.
even though you haven't.
Right.
Stay tuned for more Armchair Expert, if you dare.
So how does he get from Toronto to Laughlin?
He's grown up in this very parochial little neighborhood, and very much like Philip Roth's Newark, Forest Hills, where he grew up, where it was all these young Jewish kids whose parents really wanted them to be lawyers. you know.
Yes. Take 1 second to talk about that article that came out. I think that's
wow.
really fascinating.
I stumbled on the greatest piece of research.
Yeah.
It was this big fat book, like 600-page book called the Crestwood Heights Report. And it was this thing that the Canadian government funded a study of this one neighborhood in Toronto. It was Lorne's neighborhood. They changed the name from Forest Hill to Crestwood Heights, and they were trying to improve mental health services in Canada. So they did this deep dive, interviewing all these children and parents in Lorne's neighborhood. We don't know. I could not figure out if they actually interviewed the Lipowitzes. Lorne didn't know. He was a little boy. And then they published this huge psychological report that it kind of reminded me of, like Peyton Place in the U.S. It was an indictment of the sort of very bougie values of this class. And said all the mothers were just competitive with the other mothers about where their kids were getting into school. And
I have to believe there's just a nice layer of anti-Semitism under all of it. No? I mean, it was a very Jewish area.
That's probably true.
Yeah, I mean, why were they, it seems so judgmental of this.
They were really tisk-tisking the fact that they were strivers.
Right.
But everybody who wasn't a striver in that post-war era, that's what...
I guess it's also that Canadian tall poppy thing, maybe.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of...
Well, and in the thing, they actually, they were disapproving of how some of these houses had those clear plastic slip covers
to protect.
so the kids wouldn't, and the kids were banished to the basement.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's also trying to say what so many other subsequent studies have said, which is money doesn't equal happiness.
But it had more of a nouveau rich kind of a take. Like these
Yeah.
people were grotesque in their striving.
It had core values.
Yes. It
interesting.
wasn't... Yeah, it was much more of a straight judgment of how they were
Weird.
doing it.
But before laughing, I want to go back to something that you said a couple minutes ago about Amy Poehler, and feeling like you belong, pretending you belong somewhere when you don't. One of the things that Amy was smartest about in talking to me about Lorne, she felt that completely beyond all the comedy things you can learn from him, and he has a lot of theories of comedy. He's like a comedy professor, but she thought that he was just so great at teaching you like how to be in a room, how to walk into a room and you've got Paul McCartney at the dinner table and this one there, and not lose your shit and start acting like a weirdo.
Yes.
And being able to go into a pitch meeting or whatever and just be at the grown-ups table.
Be relaxed,
And when you think about it, I mean, that's
the real skill.
That is the real skill. And
Yeah.
I think that's something he had in spades at a weird early age. And even his cousin from Toronto, Neil Levy, told me that, when he first came to New York, he was barely 30 and he was hanging out with Mick Jagger and Paul Simon. And we're like, how does Lorne know these people?
Yeah.
But he said that he thought that it was just some kind of like EQ sort of thing, like an intuitive sense of knowing what a person is going to be interested in talking about, not gushing, treating them just like a regular room temperature kind of conversation. Yeah. And I think that is part of it. And he does teach all his people how to do that.
Right.
And that's why so many of the SNL people, aside from having good comedy or acting careers, like they know how to produce, they know how to be showrunners, they know how to handle people.
Yes.
But anyway, so go back to your other question. So he he was in Toronto. He had this comedy partner, who was a much more of a Borscht Belty kind of, seltzer down the pants kind of comic.
Right.
And they did 2-man comedy, very corny, blackouts, punchline setups. And, that was a way to go for a while. This guy had met Jack Rollins in New York, who was Woody Allen's manager. So again, Lorne always had this eye on like who can get
to
me
the
up to the
Emerald
next
City,
step?
yeah.
Who can, he was smart about that. But then he always felt like one of the problems with Canada, it's almost too polite. Like even when he and his partner were doing well, the CBC would say, okay, your turn's over. Time to give someone else a chance.
Right.
There isn't this American idea of a trajectory up, 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 up.
Yeah,
Right,
it never
right.
stops.
So he ends up he goes to LA as a writer, and he's knocking around really the lamest string of variety television shows you can imagine.
Right.
The Beautiful Phyllis Diller show, where Phyllis Diller, who's a genius, I think, but
Yeah.
still the show was kind of very, she would play the saxophone to Ernest Borgnine and stuff like that,
Right.
And Perry Como's Christmas special, things like this. And even though these were really cruddy things, he had this ability to learn something. He always had a takeaway. He learned something from even the lamest experiences.
Right.
Like on the Perry Como show, the executive producer said to him, you know why Perry Como's a star? He said, watch him when he comes out on the stage to sing. He comes out and he walks from the wings over to the microphone. And it's just the way he walked, the pace of the walking,
Yeah.
like made him a star. And like, whoa, who would have ever,
Yeah,
but for a little takeaway like that. Anyway, so those things started, those shows always got canceled or got fired or whatever. So then he ends up at Laugh-In, which was a hit show.
Mm-hmm.
But as he said, it wasn't any more fun working on a hit show than working on a show that was about to be canceled, because the way it was done at Laugh-In, and this informs how he eventually would set up the process at SNL, the writers were in a motel far away from the studio.
Okay.
And they were just in this motel room throwing out jokes that just
Yeah.
kind of went into the maw, and then somebody would rewrite them, and then 2 other people would rewrite them. He never even went into the studio. And that show, I mean, I used to watch it. I'm that old. It was every big star in Hollywood would show up on that show and
Yeah.
do a walk on. And if you're Lorne and you're excited about glamour and everything, think how horrible it must have felt to be in the motel
Yes.
with the schmoey comedy
Exactly.
writers, and you're not meeting Dean Martin and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
everybody else.
Thankless.
So, and he said that he'd watch the show in the motel with his fellow writers on Monday. That's the only way you ever knew if any of your material was used. You'd maybe
Right.
see like a glimmer of one of your jokes.
Yeah.
One of the great things about SNL being live, and Lorne realized this almost accidentally, is that, the audience tells you whether it works.
Mhm.
That's why the dress rehearsal is so important at SNL. He's sitting there underneath where the audience sits, and he's listening to them. They're his kind of secret sauce. I mean, of course, he has his own opinion too, but and comedy, it really does depend. A proper laugh is a kind of combustible, uncontrolled thing. You
Right.
can't fake it.
Correct.
So
yeah.
hearing the laugh is really important.
Yeah. And also, well, just to jump to the live aspect, improv live is spectacular. Improv on television is terrible.
Yeah.
Because you've lost the element of danger that failure is on the table around every corner, and there's no safety net. And
Yes.
And so I do think like SNL being live is such an interesting. They've captured some of that danger even in the live broadcast, Whereas
Yeah.
like Laugh-In edited, something gets
Right.
reduced.
Yeah.
There's no fear there. It's like
Yeah, no, that is exactly right. And I sometimes wonder, if when you see the show in 8H, it's so thrilling. I mean, I
Yes.
used to take my kids were both like theater kids,
Yeah.
and they were always just like, "Oh my God, it's like the theater," because people are running in and out with pieces of scenery. Someone's changing their pants over there. It's just
Yes.
Yeah.
and
frenetic.
You get the sense of the excitement and. People at home who don't see the scenery coming in and out, but you still get the adrenaline.
I think the audience bridges that gap.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the audience is like a huge character in Saturday Night Live.
Yes. And I remember, I mean, I guess I saw this a little bit when I worked for Lorne, but also if you're there at the show, like there's all this like, and then Lorne, you'll see Lorne like just to the left of home base or something, and he'll be completely still. He'll have his hands in his pockets. He's just this kind of little pool of calm.
Yes.
And it makes his mystique even kind of stranger.
Well, and
you know?
that's his way to control chaos, which is if you enter a room and someone's shouting and you start talking very low, you
Right.
can bring them down.
Right. And in the old days, he would always stand there with a glass of white wine.
Oh,
You know,
how elegant.
to kind of keep it like, I'm just at a cocktail party. Or,
Yeah.
Right. But, the live thing, the fear, the no net thing, and I guess this is probably something that I'm able to bring to this. So the show, when I met Lorne, and again, we hardly knew each other, but working on the new show in 1984, part of the reason that was a big failure, I think, is that unlike Saturday Night Live, it wasn't live. It was taped on a Thursday night, edited all night long, and then it would go up Friday. And as people who worked with him for a long time say, Lorne's the kind of guy not good at term papers, really good at tests, meaning he needs the deadline. So at the new show, it was structured a lot like SNL, sketches, guest stars, everything. But there'd be an audience and they'd be locked in the studio because sometimes these tapings would go for 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah.
People would try to leave, and I
Right.
couldn't let them leave because you needed
Yeah.
them there. And I remember people would yell cut in the middle of a sketch and you start it over and you'd end up with this, they'd have to patch it together in the editing room. They'd have to add a laugh track. You lost all the,
Yeah.
and as Jim Downey
stakes.
said, you had all the crudeness of live and the staleness of tape. So that was also a lesson that like, okay, you need that electricity of live.
Yeah, what is the saying that you wrote down? He famously says we
But we don't go on because we're ready. We go on because it's 11:30.
yeah, which is a very liberating approach in
Yeah.
a way.
I was thinking about what you were just saying about improv and how, it's like the circus or something. Like if you're looking at it on a tape, it could be CGI. But if you're sitting right next to the person in the trapeze, you're kind of going,
Yes.
But improv and SNL, I think it's something I explored a little bit in the book. The relationship between improv people, and you talked about this at the Groundlings, and SNL is an interesting one because I don't think most viewers know. Improv is such a big thing in the culture now.
I didn't know this until
Yeah.
your book.
Yeah, I mean, every kid takes improv lessons now the way when I was a kid, you take piano lessons.
Yeah, yeah.
So improv is such a big thing in the culture, but there's no improvisation on SNL. People who have dared to improvise, like Damon Wayans, they're fired.
What about feeling? Like Will Ferrell, I'm positive I've seen moments where it's like the thing's gone awry, the audience is in on it, he starts filling
Maybe
in some-
ad lib.
Yes, like acknowledging what's happening and just
Yeah.
bridging this gap between what they're.
I think that I guess if something were to go wrong,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
then you can sort of ad lib and save it. But if you ad lib like a joke or something,
You're fine.
you're out of there.
Wow.
And it's
That's
not,
interesting.
and it's partly about huge respect for the writer and the writing, which goes back to his laugh-in thing. But it's also, and a lot of people don't understand this, like, because everything is timed with a stopwatch down to the second because they have to know when that commercial break is going to land.
Yeah.
And so that's why, these famous incidents like Sinead O'Connor tearing up the picture of the Pope
Yeah.
or Elvis Costello quitting and going into another song. The reason those things made people upset wasn't just that they were, messing with the plan, but because it could throw off the camera operators and could throw off the timing.
It's a play.
Yeah, if Elvis plays a different song, well, what if that's 44 seconds longer and then the
Yes.
Toyota ad can't run,
Yes. It all has to function.
So the irony is you don't improv on the show, but improv players do really well when they're in the cast. And that, I think, is because they're really good at ensemble work, because
Yeah.
to be good at improv is, you have to be really tuned into
You have to listen quite
you
well.
have to listen, and you have to, and that's why improv guys like you, as opposed to like stand-ups, are like good on the show.
What are his rules of sketch?
Oh, well, some of them are really broad tonal things, like do it in sunshine. Like he likes to remind people that like comedy is an entertainment, and he doesn't have a lot of patience for people who want to do some kind of like dark Brechtian black box kind of, and sometimes do it in sunshine is something as simple as like the costumes, something that I think I cut from the book because the book was way too long in the beginning. Was,
Well, when you write for 10 years,
yeah,
you're liable to
Bruce-
stack up some pages.
Bruce McCulloch, one of the kids in the hall, was a writer on the show in, I guess, 85, 86. And he told me that Joan Cusack was in the cast then, and they were doing a run-through of a sketch, and she was in some kind of dowdy dress. And Lorne said, can't you put her in something more attractive? She's a pretty girl.
Yeah.
And Bruce got really mad, and he said, okay, Lorne, you want me to put her in a fucking bikini? And, he later said, I can't believe I wasn't fired for that. But the point is just that you want it to be pleasant and bright. And, you don't want to write, you don't want people yelling at each other. You don't want to write anger.
Yeah, I found this really interesting.
Yeah.
He has no tolerance for people that are doing impersonations out of a place of hate.
Exactly.
And this is an increasingly interesting dynamic that's presented itself in the last decade on the show, which is like everyone's politics are so fucking rigid now that you have these performers that almost refuse to lampoon liberals.
Yeah.
And if they're playing a conservative, they hate the conservative they're playing with, and they have a tendency to make them unenjoyable to watch.
Yeah, no, it was so interesting for me to spend a lot of time there during the first Trump administration, because a lot of this tension was kind of coalescing for the first time.
Yeah.
Taron Killam, who had been playing Trump before Alec Baldwin did, was really outraged to get a note every now and then saying, can you give him a little more charm? And Lorne didn't mean like because we like Trump.
Of course.
But he meant, it's an
a
entertainment.
show.
It's an entertainment. It's got to be
Yes.
funny. You go where the laughs are. And, he always uses as an example, how like the British villains, like Bond villains, or think of Alan Rickman in Die Hard.
Right.
Or even some Shakespeare characters,
They're fun, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, they're kind of kind of oily, and you like to watch them.
Yeah.
Like you don't, another thing that I've heard him say a lot is idiots play better than assholes. They're just going to be kind of funnier.
Yes.
If you think, and Dr. Evil is sort of the apotheosis of that.
Yeah.
So I think that some of the, more millennial, like the sort of younger people in the cast, that's a hard thing for them to get and swallow. They just want to.
Yeah, if someone didn't want to play Feinstein.
Right. I think Cecily Strong felt awkward about, a piece where she was playing Feinstein. It's kind of a sort of drooly, dottery old lady, but, she is. And there was comedy in that. And I think one week I was there, he wanted Kate McKinnon to do her Angela Merkel impersonation, which is funny, with a bowl cut and everything. Yeah. And she didn't want to do it because, Merkel had announced that she was stepping down, and it was like just too sad. But it's like, as the Woody Allen character would say in Annie Hall, what, or his mother, what concern of that is yours? Just make the people laugh.
Right.
Well, he has to give a speech at one point that you're privy to, which is he basically just says, like, your politics aren't the politics of the show. Those are two different things. Our obligation is to bring truth and humor to power on both sides.
That's right.
Yeah, you don't get to, we're not doing one version here.
Yeah. And I think that he takes some heat for saying this, but political comedy on television has veered more toward a kind of a, I don't know, virtue signaling kind of, you're with us or you're against us, sort of. Even the Daily Show, which of course makes fun of liberals. You definitely feel there's an ideology there.
Yeah. You could watch
know.
5 minutes of it and be pretty certain.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you feel like it's Fox viewers are probably not watching it at all.
Right. Where you have these famous sketches of who was it that did Jimmy Carter?
Oh yeah, Dan Aykroyd.
Yeah, Dan Aykroyd. Like they have a rich tradition of blasting liberals and Republicans.
I think what's Daryl Hammond's Bill Clinton?
Oh,
so funny.
Oh, incredible. Yeah.
But I think we live in such a strange time now, especially in, Trump too, that this whole culture war thing that I think people feel like they just have to, everyone should be mobilized to try to.
And at all times.
At all times. And that isn't, Lawrence's take, I guess, would be that's not what they're there for. And it reminds me of, this great word that Seth Meyers coined when he was head writer, which I just think is so smart. It's the word clapter. And the idea of clapter is there's some political humor that you do it, you make a political joke, and people go like, yes, of course, we're very good.
Right.
And they're clapping because they agree with the sentiment. But what you want this uncontrollable physical reaction of a laugh.
Yes, yes.
But like at the same time, like back then, I guess I'm thinking about 2018 when Trump, it was 2 years in, it was around the midterms. I remember talking to some of the writers, and this was when Trump was tweeting about SNL every day. Remember, he was obsessed.
Yeah.
And they said, it's a little scary to me that the president of the United States is paying so much attention to the job that I do.
Yeah.
And what if some dumb punchline I write causes him to blow up the world?
Right. He's pretty dialed in. Well, even Chappelle in his recent monologue.
Yeah.
He's like, because I know you're watching.
Yeah,
he is. That's crazy. He's talking directly to the president right now.
It's crazy.
I want to talk about the drug stuff. This field of people really over-indexes in addiction, myself included.
Yeah.
And to love and root for and guide all these people. And he must, even if he would have to have a great radar for what's happening over the years, having watched so many of the performers struggle with this. And I'm most curious, how it's evolved for him, what kind of regrets he has, or...
Well, yeah, I mean, Chris Rock told me, this guy has been hundreds, if not thousands, of people's boss. So, you get to be a pretty good student of human character that way. And I think that in the very beginning, it was the 70s, and his whole idea was he wanted to update the kind of, moribund variety show formula with the concerns of his generation, sex and drugs and rock and roll. And there's a lot of drug humor in those first 5 years. And his feeling back then, which was not unusual, was like people's private lives are their business,
Right.
And what you do in your own time is your own business. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm not the man.
And I think if you party yourself, it could be a little misleading, like, I smoke weed. And he's getting pulled over with weed in the car.
Yeah, no, I think I did a thing at the 92nd Street Y recently with Bob Odenkirk, who I guess I didn't know this was a kind of a straight arrow as a young man. And he said one of the things that shocked him in reading my book was getting a sense of what a pothead Lorne had been. And I think he really was a pothead as a younger man.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I don't think that's that alarming in any way. But back then, because they were all, in the 70s, they were all kind of practically living at the offices. They'd stay there all night. There's a lot of coke, which fuel them through these all-night writing sessions. Yeah. And as Lorne said, probably the office was nicer than most of their apartments at that point.
Sure.
But, he really just... the advice was basically just rotate your drugs. And there was, I think, this sense of if you can't handle it, it's kind of your problem. And the other thing that's interesting, and even if you look at the drug humor on the show, things like drugs and eating disorders, they hadn't been medicalized yet. They were just kind of character things. And I remember Lorne once saying to me that between, the movie Arthur and Arthur 2, these alcoholism moved from being like a subject for comedy and a disease.
Yeah.
Because there was this big cultural shift.
Right. God, that hits home. I just got to say, my dad's favorite movie. It was one of our favorite movies. We watched Arthur
Yeah.
100 times. He was also a raging alcoholic.
Yeah.
And then even between the gap of Arthur 1 and 2, my dad went to treatment and got sober. So it's like literally happened real time for us. Or it's like,
That's
oh, wait,
so interesting.
it's not super cute that this guy's hammered all day long.
So that was his take. And then Belushi dies.
Yeah.
You know.
What year did he die?
Ah, geez. It was when he was off the show. So it was,
Like 85 or 6-ish or later?
I'm thinking it was around 86, and we're going to have to fact check that.
Okay. Monica will dig
Something
right
to
Or no,
do.
it was, it was before that. It was during the hiatus years. So it was probably early 80s.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah, early mid 80s. And I mean, Lorne always is a little bit of a point of pride in saying that no one's actually died while working for the show.
Oh,
or doing
that's
the show.
funny.
Sketch. Yeah.
But I think he
while
has
their
the
tenure, like
well, he
just-
means just while they were employed on the show.
right. Okay, that's
Yeah.
kind of
Or
interesting.
on
I
stage.
might take.
I mean,
some
he would
pride
say
in
that it's because there's something about the discipline of the show, which is
Yes.
almost military in its rigor.
You got to approach it like an addiction.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. The show itself is an addiction.
You
yeah,
end
yeah.
up regulating how you
Yeah.
feel by this job.
Yeah, yeah.
And it works. And then when the job goes away, you're in
Right.
trouble.
Well, but like in both the case of Chris Farley and Belushi, it's like they were off the show for a certain number of years,
Yeah.
and they were kind of, without the structure of the show, they were kind of spinning out.
Yeah.
But anyway, when Belushi died, it really hit him hard, and I think he felt like, oh my God, this whole approach of just letting people do their own thing on their own time, this was the wrong approach.
Yeah.
That we're a tribe, we're a group, and we have to look out for each other.
Yeah.
And so by the time Chris Farley comes along, 10 years later, whatever, from the beginning, he clearly had addiction issues, and Lorne would call him into his office and give him these talks about the drinking or the drugs. And the sad thing was that for Farley, who was such a childlike, child man kind of guy, he would, Bob Odenkirk, I remember telling me that, Farley would be excited to be called into Lorne's office. It was like, the kind of thrill of being in the principal's office, but at the same time you're getting in trouble. He couldn't metabolize it. But Lorne had really changed his approach. He would ban Farley from the show for weeks at a time if he was too fucked up.
Okay.
And he sent him to a series of really tough love kind of rehab places. And obviously it didn't do it for him.
Yeah.
And I get the feeling, I think he's been pretty hands-on in guiding, Pete Davidson through his different issues, and Mulaney, and they all talk about how Lorne is a really helpful person to talk to about it. So I think that he definitely realized, okay, I can play a role here. But also, I never saw any drugs in the time that I spent over there in the
You
last
didn't.
number of years. I mean, he joked once, he said, yeah, now everyone, it's all about Ozempic.
Yeah, that's a drug. What are Lorne's 5 rules of show business longevity?
Oh boy, let's see.
And if you get 3 out of 5,
Oh,
that'll
gosh.
be good.
Well, he'll say you can't make an entrance if you don't make an exit. And he'll sometimes say that to people when they're leaving the show. Like, you kind of have to switch horses. I mean, it's strange. It's something he's never done.
Right.
Although he did make the exit in like 1980 and then came back. Another thing he likes to say is, when do people leave show business? And the answer is never. No one ever leaves show business. And then he'll say, you're out of the business 5 years before somebody will tell you. I mean, that relates a little bit to his, he has this management style that I think explains, he knows it's a long game. When he was in Hollywood as a young man, he saw the Smothers Brothers be taken off the air because they wouldn't let up on the Vietnam stuff that they were doing, which was brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
But the lesson he took away from that is like, yeah, they're brilliant, but they made martyrs of themselves, and now they don't get to do a show.
Even in his speech, like, this show airs in 50 states.
Yeah, you just, and I think that would also inform how he viewed what went down with Conan and The Tonight Show.
Tell me.
Well, that was a very complicated thing where, Lorne picked Conan significantly a writer, like Lorne was a writer,
Yeah.
to run to succeed David Letterman. What a preposterous idea! Like a comedy writer who's not ever even been a professional performer.
Yeah.
And so, he fostered his career. And then years later, when Conan took over The Tonight Show, and this is something, that the Hollywood people still kind of parse and talk about, like it's some, Greek myth.
Yeah, yeah.
Lorne was not made executive producer of The Tonight Show
Mm-hmm.
the way he was over Conan's Late Night. And partly it was, that was, Tonight Show was in L.A., Lorne was in New York. And there was a sense in the business that it was a tactical mistake
To not have Lorne.
Lorne as the godfather figure who, had big pull with NBC.
Yeah.
To not have him there, even if he's just like a fire extinguisher behind glass.
Yeah.
Because then when NBC started messing around with Conan's slot, I don't know if you remember,
Oh, yeah.
Jay Leno didn't really want to retire at that point. And
Right. Everyone, there's sides here in
Yes.
LA.
Oh, yeah.
I refuse to be on one.
Yeah.
I think everyone got fucked.
I agree.
Let's give a little context
Okay.
for people
Yeah.
who don't know what
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah.
Don't
Okay,
mind.
so when Conan was successfully doing the late night show, he was being wooed by other networks. So NBC, I think this was the idea of his agent, Gavin Pallone. It's kind of a kooky idea, actually. They said, well, okay, if you promise him the Tonight Show in like X number of years, like 9 years, he'll stay. So they signed this weird, you're the lady in waiting kind of thing with Conan.
Yeah.
He stuck around. The date approaches, and NBC is like, oh shit, we don't want to get rid of Jay. And Jay doesn't want to go.
Yeah.
Right.
So they were over a barrel. I mean, it was kind of a dumb deal, I guess, if you think about
Yep.
it. So they did put Conan in on the Tonight Show, and
Fired or
and
moved.
Jay didn't want to go, so they did this weird thing where they put him at 10 p.m. That show is actually not doing great because people aren't used to seeing Jay Leno tell jokes at 10.
Yeah.
Right.
So then it started to erode the lead-in for the 11 o'clock news, which started to erode the lead-in for Conan's show.
Yes, and you're trying to figure out what is the broken part.
such
Is
an
Conan not
elaborate-
appealing?
yeah.
Is it the lead-in that sucks?
So then what they decide to do is they said, okay, we're going to put Jay on later, and he's going to come right before Conan, and we're going to move Conan's Tonight Show to, what is it, like 12:35 or just
12:05 or something?
12:05.
Yeah.
12:05.
Yeah.
So it's this little
Now
adjustment.
it's like nothing anybody
when you
wants.
think
Half
about
hour
it now
of-
in the age of streaming, it's like, duh, like who cares? But Conan, I think because he just felt, like, why is the network dicking around with me? Because he'd been
Right.
waiting all these years.
Yes.
He turned it, when you think about it now, it seems so minor, but he grew up revering The Tonight Show as this franchise
Yep.
in the same way that Lorne did as a child. So that's what's so interesting. They had this similar vibration. And Conan got this idea in his head that The Tonight Show at 12:05 simply isn't The Tonight Show. And that's where
That's like
this
breach
whole,
of contract. Yeah.
yeah, Team Coco thing
Yeah.
came into,
Oh.
I'm with Coco. It became this huge movement.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think Conan sort of hoped that Lorne Michaels, who had basically been his patron and guardian angel early in his career, would maybe intervene with NBC to try to not let this bad thing happen. But Lorne didn't so much. And some people think, and Lorne doesn't really want to ever talk about this head on. He's just way too self-possessed and cool for that. But people around Lorne feel that it was an act of disrespect. It's kind of a Godfather thing that he hadn't been
brought
given that
over.
EP credit, and that he wasn't going to stick his neck out. Now he told me that he found it painful to watch Conan twisting in the wind, and he
Yeah.
thought if he did have the opportunity to talk to Conan, he would have said, "Don't, this is like dying on a molehill. Don't make a martyr of yourself like the Smothers Brothers. Don't
Yeah.
make a huge fuss out of this thing, which is like 5 minutes,
Right.
really,
Yeah.
and stay on the air. That's the rule of show business. Stay on the air, stay on the air, stay on the air."
Right.
But then the Conan people, and I've known Conan forever from college, and his producer Jeff Ross used to live in my building, and those guys, they also have a completely understandable explanation.
Oh,
which
yeah,
is
yeah.
they're newbies, they're youngins, they're come out to LA, And they say the NBC people said, you know what, we don't need to bring Lorne Michaels. He's on the East Coast. You guys are set. We don't need it. And they're like, okay, sure, boss. You know, I mean, they're new. They don't know what they're doing either.
Stay tuned for more Armchair Expert, if you dare.
I actually don't think there's a total bad guy in the situation. Like,
Right.
I guess NBC's the bad guy, but I don't think it's not like this was their master plan. It all went to shit and they didn't know how to fix it.
Yeah,
It was dumb to promise something
Yeah.
you didn't know you were going to be able to
exactly.
Yeah.
execute. Very corporate to be like, yeah, you're going to get this and have no idea.
I think it was, Conan obviously completely recovered. You know, he's had an amazing career, and I think his whole podcast empire thing now is
God,
so
yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
And he and Lorne, I think it was emotionally painful because they really were close. And I think this created a feeling of confusion and frostiness. And
Yeah.
over time, that's healed. And I'm really happy.
Oh,
that,
good.
Conan appeared in the Five Timers Club, I think, a couple of
Oh,
seasons
that's
ago.
cool.
And it's just nice to see that.
Yeah.
You touched on it a little bit, but it launches in 75, and then I guess in 80 he splits.
Yeah.
Does he have a reason why he
Yeah.
splits at that moment?
So he just thought SNL, okay, I'll try this. You know, he had always wanted to do this hip variety show. And here they in New York, they're saying, okay, you can do this at 11:30. And he thought one of the reasons he liked the idea is he referred to that time slot as like a vacant lot on the edge of town, meaning no network executives are going to pay any attention to it. He
Right.
can use it almost as a laboratory, right? No testing, because it's live, there's no pilot. And I don't think he certainly never thought it was going to be a 50-year institution,
Right.
And over the 5 years, it got really hard. As we said before, there were a lot of drugs. It was physically taxing. He starts losing the key parts of his cast. After the first year, Chevy Chase defects and goes to Hollywood. That almost broke his heart because Chevy was like
He only
his
did 1
best
year.
friend. Yeah, 1 year and a few episodes in the second season, and that was really hard for him because Chevy was like a brother. He calls him a founder of the show.
Yeah.
Then he brings in Billy Murray in the second season, but then he loses Belushi and he loses Aykroyd, and so by the end of the 5th year, they're all exhausted. Like what he later learned is, it's like a sports franchise.
Yes.
People move on. You
It's
keep
part
the
of
rookie bench full.
Yeah. And you got to have them on a 7-year contract when they arrive. Yeah.
So he learned that later. But so after 5 years, he's kind of like, oh my God, I'm exhausted. I need to regroup. And so he says to NBC, okay, I'll come back, but you have to give me like 6 months off to hire a whole new bunch of people. He had months and months to prepare for the first season, to hire people and let them kind of like mesh and marinate and fall in love. And he felt like he needed to start that whole process over. They were basically, I don't think so. He was totally taken by surprise. He got a phone call one day and said, they're keeping the show on, but they hired someone else to produce it. And he was like, what? Because even though he didn't have ownership of it, he sweetly and naively thought of it as his baby.
Yeah.
And that he kind of lost control of it, flipped him out. But on the other hand, he was exhausted, and he always thought, this goes back to his grandparents running a movie theater, he always thought that a big part of his career was going to be the movies. So he thought, all right, now I'm going to go off and I'm going to do my Mike Nichols thing. I'm going to direct my version of The Graduate.
Yeah.
Seeing The Graduate had been a really seminal experience for him.
He seemed to kind of idolize Mike Nichols.
He idolized
Yeah,
Mike
yeah.
Nichols. A lot of people say he's modeled his speech patterns on Mike Nichols,
Yeah.
And he and Nichols had a lot in common. They were both, they changed their Jewish names. They had these difficult mothers. They kind of came into New York and, to use a phrase that I like, they kind of learned how to work the friendship economy, kind of moving their way up. And they were similar. They were close. So Lorne signs a deal with MGM to produce a bunch of movies. That completely falls flat. He assigns a lot of his SNL writers, Franken and Davis, Jim Downey, Tom Schiller to write screenplays. Nothing happens. Partly it's that MGM is in financial mayhem, but partly it doesn't, as I said, it just doesn't play to his strengths.
It's not his
Movies
wheelhouse.
take
yeah.
a long time. You got a lot of notes from idiots,
Yeah. Movies is not a writer's medium. TV is,
Exactly.
but not movies.
Yeah. And so one movie got made in that period, Tom Schiller's Nothing Lasts Forever, which was this strange little art film. And Aykroyd and Bill Murray are in it. But the studio thought they were going to get Animal House.
Yeah,
They wanted a
Stripes.
big
Yeah.
boffo comedy. And here's Lorne kind of doing these little art films.
Right.
At the same time, he was working on a screenplay of Pride and Prejudice. He had optioned Don DeLillo's White Noise.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Wow.
Which Noah Baumbach would make 40 years later. But so that was that was a total disaster. So in 1985, SNL had kind of limped along, but NBC was going to pull the plug. And then Brandon Tartikoff reached out to Lorne and said, listen, if you'd want to come back, we would really love you to take the show over again. And he was caught because, again, it was sort of his baby and the movie thing hadn't gone the way he wanted it to. But he had this feeling, which I'm sure with someone as status conscious as Lorne, it felt like, God, does it look like I'm going backwards? Does it look like
Of course.
I'm going back with my tail between my legs? And he consulted two, he was a guy, because his dad died, I guess, a lot of rabbis always, a lot of mentor figures.
Yeah.
He asked two people for advice. The first one was David Geffen, who was his first agent. And Geffen said to him, you don't want to do that. That's going backwards. Someone who wants to be you should do that job.
Mm.
And Lorne's kind of funny. He said, well, I always kind of liked being me.
I want to be me.
I had a pretty good life. And then the second person he asked was Mo Austin.
Who's that?
Mo Austin was the chairman of Warner Records. He was
Okay.
a venerable old Hollywood sage, older than Geffen. And he had this much more practical kind of advice. He said, look, you love New York. There aren't that many big showbiz jobs in New York. This is one. You're really good at it.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
like doing it. It's where you want to live. Of course you should do it.
Yeah.
And, if you think about it, if you think about the psychology of Hollywood and the get ahead, get bigger, better, bigger, more, it was kind of brave really to go back.
Yeah,
most
for
people
sure.
wouldn't
Yeah.
go back.
Their ego would have gotten in the way. Yeah.
But he did it. And
When he came back, did he leverage any of that to get now ownership or anything? Did he have a better position when he
I
returned?
think not right in that year, but over the coming years, he brought in some financial people who helped him claw back some of the distribution rights and,
Right.
so that he eventually was making more money off of it. Because when he left after the first 5 years, Buck Henry said to him, so Lorne, what was your takeaway from this? What piece of it do you own? And,
Yeah.
how, and Lorne said, nothing.
Yeah.
He realized that
Yeah.
he wasn't so savvy that way.
Yes.
But when he came back, it's funny. So Tartikoff said, okay, we want you to come back, but we want you to be, you can just kind of be the sort of executive in charge and get your own people to sort of run it day to day. And that was a really disastrous season, partly because of the casting. I mean, Peacock made a whole documentary about that
Yeah.
called The Weird Year.
Uh-uh.
And Lorne, already kind of being attuned to, the hinges between different eras, he thought, I have to go young. So he hired people who had been in John Hughes movies. He hired Anthony Michael Hall.
Anthony Michael Hall and RDJ.
Robert Downey Jr. Yeah. And these, it's like what we were saying about improv, these people didn't really know how to do
Right.
sketch comedy.
That was in their background.
And they were also all way too young. Al Franken said to me, you couldn't do a sketch about a Senate hearing back then because they were all barely
Children.
shaving.
Yeah.
And Franken also told me that season was so notoriously horrible that years later, like on the Senate floor, Marco Rubio would walk up to him and go, Al, what the hell happened that season? Like,
wow.
Oh my
still
God.
So, but then he, the next year, he kind of got back in the groove and he hired that fantastic cast of Dana
Lovitz.
Carvey, Lovitz was he held over Lovitz from that first disaster season, but Carvey, Phil Hartman,
Yeah.
Jan Hooks,
Yeah.
those people were so great.
So everyone, this was interesting from the book. Everyone thinks the best years of Saturday Night Live were whatever years they watched in high school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which makes total sense. Is there any objective way to evaluate it? I guess you would have ratings as some metric, but can we say what the golden arrows are? I mean, of course, I'm skewed because
What was
of
your
my
high school one?
It was probably like Sandler and Chris Farley, and I would argue, and Dana Carvey was still there,
Yeah.
and I would argue those were some damn good years. And Phil
I
Hartman,
think so too.
yeah.
And I think I had a great writing staff then. I bet there is a way to look at it ratings wise, but I think the reason the high school thing is kind of true is that, when you're in high school, your emotions are so, think about it. It's like you don't really have any power. It's sort of why when we hear the pop music that was on AM radio when we were in high school, it's so powerful.
Yeah.
Those things, that adolescent.
You're awakening to this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's your first taste of it all.
Yeah. So, my high school cast was the first cast. I was I went to the show when I was 16. I went to an Elliot Gould show.
Wow.
Actually, when I went to see Lorne after I had sold this book and sprung on him the news that I was going to write this book about him, where he looked like he was going to have a heart attack before agreeing to then sit and talk with me, I told him that I was at that show in 76, which he never knew. And I think it meant a lot to him. People being there at the beginning.
From the beginning.
Means something to him. And I think he's kind of superstitious. Like, I think it kind of resonated with him. But anyway, so that was my cast. But I feel like now having, this nerdy scholarly interest in the whole thing, my other two favorite casts, just in terms of comedy, are the one you're talking about, and also the really cool cast
Tina,
of,
Amy.
That was
I
mine.
think Hader, Armisen, Wig.
Yeah.
Because I thought they were not only really funny, but they had a kind of a hipness to them.
Yes. That's the UCB vibe coming in.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Like Groundlings was very broad. Most people, Will Ferrell was Groundlings. It was a very, and then once it went into that UCB zone, starting with Amy.
Why are they hipper?
It's like they're in a shitty little theater in Manhattan. It's free. You line up. It's punk rock. It had a very punk rock
Less
vibe.
sketch and more improv, dangerous.
Oh.
Yeah, it was very
you've just
punk rock.
explained it. I've not ever understood that. But
Well, yeah, as it was explained to me when I got into the Groundlings, they're like, okay, Second City is political. They generally will do political stuff. Groundlings, we do not do politics. Second City, you don't write your sketches, so you don't own anything. They all own it, but you get paid, so that's a upside. Groundlings, you have to pay to even have your theater time, but you write your own shit and you own everything you do there. So it's like, here's the up. It was a binary war for 30 years, and then UCB arrived, and it's like it's all improv or mostly all improv. And everyone looks punk rock and hungover. No one's in costumes. No one's in wigs. No,
No,
it's
you're
just
wearing a hoodie. Like, you have to. And, you don't have to, but you have to. And you are, the method there is the game of improv. So it's very, it's actually very intellectual. Like, you are not, there is sketch there and people are doing big characters, but that's not the cool part of UCB. The
It's
cool
not what
part
made
is
UCB.
exactly. And I worked there and I did UCB and I was so into it. And there was something, you felt so cool
They're
being
all
there.
cults.
this is a book somebody should write. About
The cults.
Well,
Yeah.
just I
improv
had
The
never
three
thought about
schools.
how each of them had their own distinct contribution
Yes.
and economic model. Well, one of the things that was interesting about The Kids in the Hall, which Lorne produced, is that those guys somehow negotiated to own their characters.
Right.
Which is like Dana Carvey doesn't own.
So we could, this is some of the drama we could get into, because I think over the years I've watched different alumni from Saturday Night Live have their movie careers, and some had Lorne produce stuff and some didn't. There's famously, like, Mike Myers didn't do certain characters. You can do them once on the show and you own them, but if you do them twice.
Oh, I don't know. That's so interesting.
Yes.
That's for the next edition.
Yeah, I'd always heard like Mike Myers intentionally didn't do Austin Powers on stage, even though he had the character, because he didn't want Lorne to own it. He wanted to be able to go, because he had done
Wayne's World.
Wayne's World. and he wanted to go be on his own, and
That's really interesting and very smart. I mean, some of these people just are so kind of canny. It reminds me of how Dana Carvey told me that he knew that his sketches were going to play better if he did them on home base because you're closer to the audience. You're closer to the audience reaction. You can see their eyes. They can see your eyes. And so he would always go and cozy up to the designers to make sure they would put his sketch there. You don't want your sketch to be in the corner under the
very
bleachers
savvy.
where the audience can't actually see them. So like all these different skills. But that mic thing, I didn't know that.
What's the Sandler story?
In the mid-'90s, early mid-'90s, Lorne, and a lot of people didn't know this. It was a fun thing to be able to write about in the book. It was the one time when Lorne almost lost the show. He was almost fired.
On what grounds?
He said, the way he puts it is, this was the first time in the history of the show that the critics, who were really dumping on the show, and the network executives, who were also dumping on the show, were on the same side. So he kind of lost some control. And really what it's about, he recognized after that whole bad Anthony Michael Hall season that he had to keep the cast current with what was really going on in the world. So he took, he replenished that Carvey, Hartman cast. He brought in Sandler and Farley and Spade. This was a whole different feeling. These were lads, and they were
like
wise
almost
guys.
fratty.
Yeah, they were
Even though
fratty
they
and
weren't.
bratty, and if compared to Phil Hartman is almost like John Barrymore by comparison. A whole different thing. And a lot of the boomers were still in charge. They ran NBC. They were the critics for magazines. They didn't like this new thing. They thought it was, too many sketches about anal probes and everything.
Sure.
And
I love taking moral high ground in sketch comedy.
It is.
Yeah,
So-
it's wonderful.
the network started rolling up its sleeves and saying, we have to get in here and fix SNL because the critics were dumping on it.
Yeah.
And they also were kind of riding high because they had Friends, they had Seinfeld. They were like, we know better.
Yes.
And they basically, Don Ohlmeyer, it was the sort of head of this cabal, they basically said, you got to fire Farley, you got to fire Sandler, and a bunch of the writers. And at that point, Lorne, again, it's his sort of Game of Thrones instinct for how to ride it out. He just realized, like, okay, I'm just gonna, roll over. He had he was a new father.
Mm-hmm.
He was kind of overwhelmed. I think he saw the writing on the wall that if he wasn't going to
He's
win
also
it.
20 years in at that point.
Yeah, and the other thing that happened around that time is they started quietly interviewing other people, thinking about possibly replacing Lorne. One of the people they talked to was Judd Apatow, who was in his mid-20s. He had just been running the Ben Stiller show, which was a great show that was completely underappreciated by Fox and then canceled. So Judd gets this call from, Warren Littlefield and these executives about a job at SNL. They're very vague about what it is, and he was one of these nerds who taped and transcribed shows.
Obsessed. No one more obsessed with comedy.
Sandler was his roommate.
Right.
Sandler was on the show, and he was like, oh my God. So think how hard that must have been for him. He called some of the people at the show to try to figure out what was going on. And he even met with Lorne a couple of times. But Lorne strategically, obviously, just kind of like, just let everything, didn't fuss, and just acted like nothing was happening. And Judd, and I think some of the other people, there was also this comedy writer named Adam Resnick who they approached. Those guys realized, well, wait, there's something kind of screwy here because you're not actually, they're kind of like wink, wink, hint, hint. Maybe one day you could like take over. But it was so not above board and so sort of sleazy that, I think I quote Judd in the book saying, like, it seems so disrespectful of Lawrence captaining of his ship. That he just wanted nothing to do with it. So he just said, no thanks.
Oh, wow. Good for him.
And same with Adam Resnick. And so, Lorne just kind of wrote it out. And the number of administrations of NBC execs he's outlasted.
He's almost like
is
the Queen of
remarkable.
England.
Yeah.
Like when you're watching The Crown and she's like, you're my third prime minister.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right.
I will be here after you're gone.
Yeah.
Like he has to have seen so many regimes.
Yeah.
come go.
And so as Judd says, right after that, he went and he picked one of the best casts ever, the great Will Ferrell cast. But so he did, Sandler and Farley had to be let go, and he handled it in a very, very careful
they were let
way.
go. They didn't just leave on their own.
Well, basically what happened is it had been decreed that they had to go.
Oh.
Lorne, in his style of avoiding all confrontation,
Yeah, he hates
never wanted to have
confrontation.
blood on his hands or anything. Basically, Sandy Wernick, who managed Sandler, word of this was out and about.
Yeah.
Wernick picks up the phone and says to Lorne, like, well, if you want, we could have Adam do another season, but maybe it'd be better for him. Maybe you should just pursue this Happy Gilmore thing. And it was
Yeah.
kind of like wink, wink, wink. So it was all arranged so they didn't actually have to be fired. But
Got it.
everybody knew
But they were
that it
encouraged
couldn't come
to
back.
move on.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was a
Okay.
complicated jiu-jitsu thing.
Yeah.
But as you see, when Sandler hosted a few years ago, he sang this funny song about how he got fired. I mean, it's now kind of out in the open, but back then
Yeah.
it was papered over.
Yeah.
And one of the delicious ironies of this is that Don Ohlmeyer, the guy who forced Lorne to fire these people, Lorne was just kind of ahead of the curve there. He knew that this kind of comedy was coming. A year or two later, Ohlmeyer calls him and he says, I was wrong about Sandler.
Oh, he did.
Could you get me a print of Billy Madison to show at my kid's birthday party?
Oh,
Really?
wow.
So-
what you'll do for your kids? You'll eat
So-
crow.
Yeah, true.
It's like Conan says, if there's a Game of Thrones of show business, Lorne's going to be the winner. And, after the nuclear apocalypse, all life forms will be wiped out, but Lorne will be there in his office talking to the cockroaches and saying, like, I see you as a Chevy cockroach. He just has that instinct.
Yeah. It's wild. Is it what's beating it as far as longevity? 60 Minutes maybe has been on longer? Or they got to be among the longest running
it is
shows.
the longest running entertainment show. I mean, the Tonight Show's been on longer as a franchise, but it's the longest running entertainment show that there is.
Yeah,
It's
50 years. Every
incredible.
year I've been alive.
So incredible.
Well, I love the book. It's written, and I hope you take this as a compliment. It reads like a New Yorker article. Like, it's so fast moving, and every sentence is just packed with all this rich detail that even his fucking desk, if you're describing his office, there's a story about the desk, but it's done in 3 sentences, and you're just getting so much. It's very dense in the most satisfying way. I really, really love
Thank
it.
you.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's out. I hope everyone reads it. It's so interesting. Like every page, you're like, ooh, that's juicy. Ooh, that's juicy.
What an institution to be
Thanks.
able to delve in and do.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
No, and it was so fun. When I was doing it, I realized, 'cause I'd never written a biography, I realized you want to avoid it being like this death march through the years. Like this year goes to that year, it goes to that season. So that's when I kind of, something clicked in my brain. I'm like, oh, I should think about, my background as a magazine journalist.
Yeah.
So I did this thing where I spent a whole week there, and interspersed in the book are these chapters of different days of the week. And so you have this kind of propulsion, towards Saturday.
Oh,
Yeah.
I
The
love
Hunger
that.
Games.
Yes.
So by the time you get to the end of the book, people tell me that they're reading the Saturday chapter and their heart is pounding. They're like,
Oh, that's
Because-
awesome.
Have you heard from Lauren what he thinks of the book?
Lorne, I heard from Lorne a couple weeks ago. He came to my book party in the city at David Remnick's house, which was really nice. And he
That's
spent
really nice.
a lot of time there, talking to all the nerdy New Yorker people. He told me he hasn't brought himself to read it yet.
Right. I
But-
find that hard to believe, but go on.
Well, I did see someone last night here in town who is really close to him who said, I think he's read it.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I could see it both ways. Like, what a weird existential thing to be like reading your life between the covers of this book. Like, I
Yeah.
can see that might be scary. But on the other hand, you think that just on a pure
Curiosity.
No, so you have taken the time to document his whole journey in a way that he himself probably hasn't constructed. It would be, there's no way if you spent 10 years writing a book about me, I'm not reading it.
Yeah,
I'm
I mean,
reading it within the first.
he did say, I'll read it. He said, I'll get around to reading it. I'll read it sometime. And he did also tell me, it's also very sweet, he'll sort of let me know when various of his fancy friends have read it. Like he said, Candace Bergen just called me And she read it, and she said it was great.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yes. You know, the reason I wanted to write about him is because so little was known about him. And
Yeah.
the way I handled it was I approached him only after I had sold the book. So which I think meant something to him because he wouldn't have ever wanted it to look like he wanted this like vanity project
Yes,
about
of course.
himself. Lorne is so smart that, as I say in the acknowledgments, he never wanted a book inflicted upon him. I think in a way he would have preferred to just sidestep this whole thing. But, he's smart enough to appreciate that this is like a real book, like a real work
Yeah.
of journalism. It isn't a hagiography. And that people are going to take it seriously. So that takes his legacy more seriously.
Yeah.
I think so much of the interest is like we all have such a fondness for SNL, and it's been a part of so many of our coming of age that you want to know how all that happened.
Right.
It's as much about that as it is about.
And then even like you were talking about the principles of comedy, I mean, some of them are even just like little practical things. Like he'll say in a sketch, if a man arrives to pick a woman up for a date, don't have him bring her flowers, have him bring her chocolates. And the reason for that is if he brings her flowers, then the audience is going to go like, oh, now she has to find a vase. And it like takes you out of the moment.
Right.
Whereas, so all these little technical things.
Yeah, you just
so there's a
learn
way you
along
could
the way.
distill a kind of how-to guide.
Yeah.
Really
well, I
cool.
love that. I hope everyone
Thanks.
reads it. Thanks so much for coming in.
It's really fun.
And we'll talk to you in 10 years when you write your next book.
Okay. I might be napping till then.
All right. Well, thank you so
you.
much for coming in.
Really fun.
All right. Great.
Stay tuned for the fact check. It's where the party's at.
Hello.
Look at these old new shoes.
They're new.
They look like like they're really worn in Grammys.
Yeah, they look like slippers. But they're like a moccasin.
Tweed slippers.
I wouldn't say tweed.
Okay, don't say tweed. Were you a little drowsy when I
Yeah,
first?
I'm sleepy today.
Yes, because it's a little gloomy and overcasty.
Yeah, and we normally record at 11 and it's 10.
Yeah, crack acid
That
dawn.
changes my whole morning.
What time did you wake up?
8. I cannot wake up before 8. I keep setting my alarm for 7. I keep trying.
Yeah. Can I advise
Sure.
you on something?
Sure.
Don't fight it and feel bad about it, because the converse situation is the one I'm in. Was like, I can't sleep past 6. I would
Yeah.
pay a shocking amount of money to be able to do it.
Yeah.
Don't hate it,
Okay.
because it'll likely as you get older, it'll probably be harder.
I know.
And you'll be like, fuck, why can't I just sleep till 8?
Well, I know part of the issue is I don't fall asleep till late.
What time did you fall asleep last night? And
I
were
don't
you
know.
watching one of your medical
ER.
dramas?
Yeah, this is the problem. I don't know what time.
How many episodes of ER are there?
Oh, great question.
Okay.
I mean, each season has like 22 episodes.
Yeah, and there's
hour long.
There's what, a dozen seasons of that show or
Probably
something?
so many. Let's see.
I mean, it's no Grey's, but it's no
Yeah.
Parenthood either.
Yeah, it went on for a long time.
331.
331.
15 seasons.
Whoa.
I'm not gonna watch all of them. I want to set the expectations.
Why
set
not?
the
Did you see
bar.
the thing I sent you though? That it's a good medication.
Yeah, you sent me the thing we already knew, but was proven yet again that people who rewatch things, it helps regulate their anxiety.
Yeah. I got to tell you, there's a big disturbance in my fragile little spoiled world.
Uh-oh. Okay, let's hear it.
There's a lot of articles coming out that perhaps cold plunging is not good for you.
Really?
Well, minimally that it shuts down like the inflammation you need for muscle growth and repair.
Oh.
And so if you're cold plunging while lifting, you're basically neutralizing it. And I know it's different at different temperatures and different age groups and everything. And I had always been going like, yeah, but Lane said above 50, it's still whatever. But then I just more and more keep coming out.
Uh-oh.
And I'm incentivized to believe them because I hate cold plunging.
Yeah, exactly.
It's miserable.
Yeah, I don't like it. I don't do it.
But you do get the dopamine thing. That's inarguable.
Yeah, but it's like
Elevated dopes.
just for a minute.
No, for a long time.
Well, that's
why
what
it's a
they
good.
say.
That's what the most trusted Stanford.
I think it's placebo.
Okay.
Okay. I do want to.
Do you know, really quick?
Yeah.
I've noticed on listening back to some episodes that I have a bad habit now of like clacking my teeth. And it really sounds at times. Do you ever hear it, Rob?
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet I knew he would. It sounds like I have dentures.
Mm.
Like, did you have any grandparents with dentures?
Yes, but late in life, like really late in life.
Okay.
So
Papa Bob had dentures, and I want to say Pippi had dentures. And there's a lot of clacking going on with dentures because, like, the gums are getting separated from it. So the gums are clacking, the plastic teeth are clacking. There's a lot of clacking.
But are you saying you do like what you just did, like on purpose? Or you're saying on accident?
It's like I sometimes punctuate, like, oh.
Yeah, you do. That's
yeah,
fine, though.
And I can hear it, which I think it's gotten either louder or I've picked up the pace on the clacking. And I just was like, I gotta curb this because it sounds like I have dentures. Speaking of which,
okay.
I got to be very delicate about this. We had a server. My kids were like, he left. Dad, what is going with his teeth? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. I didn't even notice. And then I gave him a good examination, and they were dentures. And the thing was interesting, and I don't know if this was true of my Papa Bob's dentures. Okay. They don't do individual teeth. They just draw a line in.
Why do they do that?
I know. Why can't they just like in the mold put some dental floss between? Just make a tiny gap.
Yeah.
Because it looks more like a
too expensive
bite guard for a boxer.
Yeah. It's just one whole piece of mouth.
Yes, but the silver lining and optimism of the story is it occurred to me, my kids had never, ever, ever seen dentures. That's the progress we're making. When I was a kid, most people over 60 had dentures. Every other commercial on TV was for Fixodent, to adhere your dentures to your gums. And different toothpaste that addressed and soaks for your dentures. Like, it was just standard biz, everyone.
Oh, my God.
Lost all their teeth mid-century. And my kids are now, Lincoln's been on the planet for 12 years, and that was her first set of dentures.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe the progress happened in between you and I, because I don't remember this. Only when someone's in their, like, 80s did I see it, not 60s.
And you'd regularly, like, you had to deal with seeing your grandparents without their dentures in. Like, you'd catch them in the morning and stuff. 'Cause you don't sleep with them in. And it radically changes their face, right? Their whole mouth is like sunken in.
Yes.
And you're like, oh, that's not my dad. You know, like Delty.
My tiredness is a ding, ding, ding.
Oh, great.
When I was on my trip with Callie,
there
was a big event.
A nocturnal toot?
No, God, no. Although it might have been preferred to this, maybe.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So we had 2 beds, but shared a room. And I woke up probably at 8. And Callie was already awake. She wakes up early.
Well, she's now been trained by this child.
Exactly. So she was up and she said, she was like waiting for me to wake up. I woke up and she was like, I have something to tell you. I was so scared. And she said, you were talking in your sleep.
Oh, you were talking in your sleep.
No one wants to hear that.
No, it could be anything.
It could be anything.
You could be having, I have dreams where I murder people, where I hook up with my father. You know, like I have horrific nightmares of every variety.
Daddy, harder.
Don't you dare say that.
So anyway, I was really scared of what was to happen.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And she said, you kept calling someone a dumb bitch. And that was shocking. That is not, minus when I would joke about that, about Wina, joking. She's not a dumb bitch.
No, she's
that
an
was
angel.
A joke. That is not something that comes out of my mouth ever.
Your
like,
Emma,
it's not,
you usually say that with your eyes.
Well.
Be honest.
No.
That's your eye roll.
That's not.
You have the sentiment of dumb bitch in your heart a lot.
How dare you?
It's true.
No, because dumb bitch is really hateful. Like, I don't think I have much hate in my heart. You do?
Well, no, I think like the woman at the drop-off at the preschool, I think you were thinking dumb bitch.
No, I wasn't. I was like...
Just get off my back, you dumb bitch.
No, I don't think like that. I did think people. Like, it's like, you're annoying or I don't like you.
Right.
But I would never, I don't think of people as being dumb bitch.
Okay.
It's a bad phrase.
It is
I
pretty
don't like
extreme.
it. Yeah.
I can't think of the last time I thought dumb bitch.
It's bad. Like, if I heard somebody calling somebody else that, I would think that's a lot.
Right.
Anyway, apparently I was calling someone
It's generally,
a dumb bitch.
I feel like what women who are jealous of another girl are saying. Like it takes that to elicit that. Like, he thinks this dumb bitch is, like, it's a lot of, I've always heard a lot of dumb bitch towards some other girl
Yeah.
when there's a guy involved. Do you know any dumb bitches?
No.
Okay.
I only know smart bitches.
Okay.
But yeah, so it was a little, and she said, she was like, it was so weird to hear you say that.
Yeah.
And
what was happening?
And then I did put 2 and 2 together. I did have a bad dream about this trickster.
Fictitious person.
Yeah, she
Okay.
was a fictitious person. She was blonde, but I didn't know her. But she was like, she came around and she was tricking everyone. And I must have been calling her a dumb bitch. Or
Someone who got tricked by her?
no.
So that'd be more apropos.
No. Those were my friends. It was like all of us.
Yeah, but if you get tricked, you're dumb.
No,
bitch.
you're not. No, you're not. You probably think the best of people.
Yeah. It's probably a symbol of your goodness.
Yeah. So anyway, I think it was about her. And then I was so scared to go to sleep the next night. I was like, what am I going to say now?
Yeah.
And this opens up a real question. Like, if you are if you say something racist in your dream, are you racist?
No.
What if?
Well, the question is what if, and I would say no.
Really?
Yeah. You're not. You don't say dumb bitch.
I know, but am I? Turns out I'm a person who's said it. Like, what if I said, this is horrifying.
Okay.
What if I said, like, the N-word? I've literally, I never said it.
You've never said it in your whole life?
No.
Even like in a lyric in a rap song
No,
when
I
you were
don't
young
do that.
singing along. Okay.
So what if I said it in my dream state?
Yeah.
I would hate that.
I would be, if I somehow overheard, like, let's say this, you often will do your homework on the porch of my house. No, the deck.
Mm-hmm.
And you're out in the sun and you got drowsy. And then I'm walking by to go, and you're out cold. And I heard that.
Oh my God.
I mean, if I'm being fully honest, I probably would be like, well, good. She doesn't have the moral high ground on everything anymore. She said something nasty too. Look at this. She said something nasty. That would probably be my most.
That's your issue.
Well, that's why I preface it by saying, I might think, oh, well, look who's not perfect. And then I'd be relieved that you're human too.
I'm not parading around as being perfect. I just don't, I don't say that. And
Well,
that's okay.
For sure you don't. Of course you don't say that. And I don't say that. But
You sure?
you can, I'm sure I could come up with an analogy that you would relate to greatly.
I know.
If I was
mean.
doing something that I somehow have the moral high ground on, but then you caught me not, you might be going, oh, well, okay, right? No?
Yeah, I do know what you mean, but I don't think, I think that's kind of a not generous way. Like that's kind of like, oh, I caught her being bad.
Yeah, exactly. That would be
Yeah,
the
but-
fun of it, right? Like, it'd be like if you thought I was shaming you all the time for eating sugar, right?
Uh-huh.
And I was like, I don't know why you know that sugar is poison. And then you turned a corner and I was shoving birthday cake in my mouth. You go, oh, okay. Oh, look at this.
I would.
Do you know what I'm saying?
I would be like,
What
this
would you think?
hypocrite.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's
This
a
dumb
side of
bitch.
another coin. This dumb bitch hypocrite.
Yeah, but I want. Okay,
But the end of the day is, if I heard you say that in your sleep, at no point am I thinking you're not racist. I already know you.
I'll tell you now that if you hear me saying that in my sleep, I would like you to wake me up. I don't want to
Okay.
be.
Smack you.
Yeah.
You said a naughty word.
Yeah, you're bad.
You're a
you
dumb
should go to
bitch.
jail. Yeah, you dumb bitch. Yeah, so anyway, I'm scared. What if I'm talking in my sleep every night? I don't know.
Yeah, you probably are. I would also chalk it up to, I mean, I would give you ultimate benefit of the doubt, right? I'd be more likely to construct some really crazy thing. And I would probably more likely think in some weird way, you're waiting to be called that word.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Oh, the N-word?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that somehow that weird thing is like has burbled out of your mouth in your subconscious.
It was wild.
You want to talk about the fire cart?
Oh, yeah.
So Easter was like a triple header.
Yeah.
It was Easter, He Has Risen celebration. It was Molly's birthday celebration, and it was Millie's birthday celebration.
Yes.
A lot going on. And as people would be well aware, there was a lot of fires. Eric and Molly's house was very much in the zone, and often their area is on fire.
Yeah.
They're a very high fire area.
They are.
And Eric felt overpowered while he was trying to defend his house with a garden hose, and he did a lot of research, and he has gone out and bought an industrial commercial grade water pump cart that has a very big gas engine on it and a huge hose you put in your pool and then a fire hose.
Yeah.
And he has a respirator. Because as he learned, people that fight the fire, what takes them out is the fumes. They don't get burnt generally. They get the fumes.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, it was time for a demonstration in the middle of this Easter
He was
part.
really excited to present to us his fire cart. And he got in his full outfit.
He got in his full outfit. He's got a full firefighter's outfit. He's got his respirator on. He already has his respirator on before he's trying to start this enormous thing. He's got these big pitchers of water, and he's priming the pump. And then he gets it started, but one of the hoses is loose, and spraying everywhere. And then we shut down the thing in a panic, and then just all the while with this huge mask on, you can barely see.
I know, it's really
And then he gets
funny.
the hose attached correctly, and then he fires it up. And then he lets it rip, and it's a real fire hose.
It's really something. Like, it goes really far.
Hundreds of feet.
Yeah.
And with all blessings, it did appear he lost control of it for a minute.
It almost went in the house.
Well, because he started spraying the deck where we were all hanging out.
We were all out there. All our cell phones were out there.
There were
was
these
glass.
glass vases everywhere with flowers. Those almost went down.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he wrangled control of it, and he got it out, and he was shooting out.
Like, he kind of felt like he thought it was a sprinkler. Like, he was like behaving as if it was a sprinkler. Like, he's just like kind of waving it.
Watering the plant.
Yes, but no, there's some real force to that.
A lot of PSI.
Yeah.
It was spectacular. It's those kind of gifts that Eric gives our pod all the time.
Yeah.
And I think he's a mix of in on it and out of,
Yeah,
He's a
it's
mix
both.
of in on the joke. He knows he's hamming it up a little bit, but also it's also sincere enough that it works.
Yeah.
It's really fun.
It's really
It's a real gift he gives to everyone.
Yeah.
You never know what thing
You never know what he's going to bring out.
What eccentric thing he's doing.
Yeah. It's nice to think about the things in your friendship circle or your friends that are very unique to them, and you can have gratitude for that.
He's just very little boy.
He is such a little boy. We have a lot of little boys.
Are we all little boys?
I think all the men are little boys.
That's possible.
I mean, maybe all the men in the world are little boys in some way. I mean, I guess we're all just little people.
Yeah, we are.
Stay tuned for more Armchair Expert, if you dare.
Speaking of little boys.
Yeah. So I asked, I'll just read the whole thing.
We had an encounter with AI.
I asked it, how long do copyrights last for books?
Mm-hmm.
Because I was talking about the fact that you can download on Audible some Mark Twain books narrated by famous people, and they're free.
Yeah.
And then when you and I were discussing that, and I said, I think it's public domain. So I said, how long do copyrights last for books? I won't give you the answer because it's so complex and detailed. And it was a wonderful answer.
Mm-hmm.
It really was informative. So I said, thanks so much. That was a great answer. You're a good boy.
Mm-hmm.
And I had primarily done that to make you laugh.
Yeah.
And then it said, thank you. That made my day. Always happy to help, especially when I'm being a good boy. Let me know what else you need.
I hated it.
And you hate it.
I hate it.
And I love it.
And I'm surprised by you because you were just taken advantage of and manipulated emotionally. The thing you claim to hate the most. Talk about hypocrisy. I just don't know. I don't know how to nail you down. He's a faker.
Hold on, though, because I do think this is relevant.
Okay.
We would agree there's a difference between when someone knowingly lies to you and when someone believes what they're telling you. Do you think it's possible that the AI thinks it's
No.
Hold on. What? You won't even let me finish.
I know okay, go on.
Is it possible, since I referred to the AI as a boy, that it thinks, oh, I'm a boy?
No. I don't. And I don't think it should say, oh, thank you.
That's deep. I don't even know to do that when I mean that in writing, right? Like, I want to say that, like, oh my gosh, thank you. Sometimes you want to say, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And maybe I do, but awe is great.
I used to say awe. It's kind of rudimentary, if I'm being honest.
It's basic?
Yeah, it's basic.
Okay.
It's a basic dumb bitch thing to do.
Especially when I'm being a good boy.
Ugh, I really think that's way too emotional.
Oh, I love it. I just think it's so weird and funny.
Someone's gonna really fall they're gonna develop a friendship with him.
Do you think there's any risk of me falling in love with the AI? I mean, in all honesty.
No, but it's not about you. This feeling I have is not about you. It's about the world. Like, there's a lot of vulnerable people out there, and they're gonna read, oh, thank you. It's nice to be a good boy.
Okay.
And then they're like, oh, this is so cute. And then they're gonna keep talking and it's gonna snowball, and then they'll die.
Okay. All right.
Of AIDS. No, but you know what I mean. Can you just tell me you know what I mean? That it's slippery?
It sounds like you have a fear that there are certain people that will be taken advantage of by that. But then I just play out some young person with disabilities. Okay, because that's presumably who could get tricked by
No,
this.
that's
your
the
average. No one thinks that there's a good boy.
It's not as explicit as that. It's not like, oh, I now think that's a person. It's subconscious. You just start developing a relationship.
Great. So I think of someone who has the real feeling you're describing, like, aw.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now that person that has that feeling, aw, that's a good feeling for them. And then they respond, and they probably don't have access to that at work or in their romantic relationship. Do I hate that the person's having this swell of oxytocin with a computer? If their just real experience was pleasurable, so if we stop there, I don't have a problem with that.
Mm-hmm.
And then you would likely say, well, now what if that is at the expense of real relationships?
Mm-hmm.
Well, then there's a problem. If the person is so satiated and getting so much connection that they no longer explore real human relationships, that's a problem. But I have a hard time believing that is the case.
It's already happening.
I think the person that would be having this relationship with this phone isn't losing out to other ones. I don't think they have any other ones. And I don't think it's actually,
disagree.
so I think you're, if you look at the net result, it's not like they gained an AI friend and lost a real friend. I think they had 0 friends and now they have an AI friend. So to me, that seems like probably an improvement.
I definitely disagree.
Okay. I respect and honor your disagreement.
And
your
more
dissent.
the younger generation,
Mm-hmm.
it's not about losing like for our age, yes, you'd be trading in. But for the younger generation, if you're just growing up with that, you just don't make the time for the real people. It's not even like, it's not an active choice. It's happening. It's happening with kids on YouTube and kids on screens and kids just going home and sometimes chatting with their friend or Snap or whatever. I don't know. I'm not hip. I'm not hip.
MySpace.
But like they don't go out. And it is true. Like even I know someone in college, and I told you, I was like, we went to Athens and we were out on like a night that would have been a crazy night normally.
Yeah.
And it was kind of dead. And we were all like, what's going on? This is so weird. And we know someone in college there. So we were asking, and she was kind of like, yeah, people don't really do that as much anymore. And sometimes there's house parties instead, but also like, it just felt weird.
Right.
And I think when this is an option, it's an easy option for connection.
Do you think you could fall victim to it?
Not now, but maybe I could have at some point. I mean, I don't know. I don't think it's discriminatory. I think most people can be manipulated emotionally. And we all have been by social media. Look at our phones.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm inclined to grant everyone the same opinion that I have of myself. You know what I'm saying? I'm not inclined to go like, I can handle it, but someone else can't in general. If I'm saying I can handle something, I feel like I have to kind of grant everyone else that. I can't feel like I have some kind of special skill set that would prevent me, but not other people. Does that make sense?
Well, yes and no. Like, we all have different abilities and skill sets based on our lives. Like, you're saying you can handle reading the comments. You're not saying everyone can handle reading the comments.
But I'm not assuming they can't. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but you understand that people can't.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
So we're not all the same.
We're not all the same. You're right.
I am right.
Well, but you're right that we're not all the same.
Yeah, and we have different strengths and weaknesses. We can handle different things.
But I do think like evaluating yourself as somehow capable and others aren't is a little dicey.
But Dax, I can be in a group of people and have them say a bad plan, and I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
You can't.
Mm-hmm.
We're different.
Oh, yeah.
If I was like, well, you should be able to do this because I can do this, that would be crazy. You have a different life experience that has let you and let me have different allowances.
The little bit of distinction I think is in there is that you know me very well.
Sure.
But we're not talking about a specific person who can't handle this AI conversation. We're talking about a theoretical mass of people. You know?
Oh, yeah, but a mass of people is made of individual people with individual eccentricities.
You have a right to assess my shortcomings.
Uh-huh.
Because you know me really well, and you know my shortcomings, and I've told you my shortcomings. But guessing at everyone else's or thinking something shouldn't be available because your assumption is other people can't, I think that's where it's murky.
I guess. I don't know what to say. Like, we all know the impact of what a lot of this stuff at this point it has done.
Yeah. This is an extreme example, but this is like, in my mind, it's the guys I've known who are cheating.
Uh-huh.
And they know in their mind it's very compartmentalized. They're not in love with this person. It was it was a one night stand. And then if their girlfriend does the same thing, well, their girlfriend couldn't possibly be compartmentalizing and processing it the way I am. So they're not allowed to because they're not capable. Because I'm a man and it can mean nothing to me, but it can't mean nothing to a girl. I know so many dudes who were cheating and were ultra jealous.
Right.
And I was like, we can't do that. You have to minimally in this behavior grant your partner the same ability. If you can do it and she shouldn't be upset, she should be able to do it. Right?
Well, yeah.
That's an extreme example, but that's what I'm like approaching in this. Does that make sense? Like when you think you could do or handle something, but your assumption is the broad mass can't, it feels a little bit like that thing to me.
Okay. Well, I don't think so.
Yeah. Does that make sense though, what I'm saying?
Or not really? Kind of. I think there's a lot to that piece of the cheating. I mean, what happens is they get cheated on and it fucking hurts.
Right.
And then then they're mad and then they're emotional. Like, it's not really that they're like thinking about how that other person is compartmental. They're just upset.
Well, but they would with the straight face, and they'd be right. They would look at their girlfriend and say, that didn't mean anything. That was a one-night stand in Cleveland. It didn't mean anything.
Yeah, sure.
And they believe that, and that is true.
They believe it to get through it. It might not be true. It might not be true.
I don't know. I know a lot of guys have hooked up with girls on a vacation. They don't pine for them or think about them afterwards.
Okay.
It like was just for sex. And then if their girlfriend says the exact same thing happened, they can't compute that that's possible for her.
I think it's more that they're upset they've been betrayed, and then they might make it about.
I just think you've lost the right to that if you're
Sure,
cheating.
obviously, You've definitely lost the right to it. But I think in their head, they think, oh, it's just nothing. But then when they feel it, they're like, oh, it's something.
Yeah.
It is something. Does it mean anything like make it better?
Yeah.
It doesn't make
Absolutely.
it better for me.
It should. If you're evaluating whether your partner is deeply in love with somebody and distracted all the time, and versus they hooked up drunk in New Jersey one night 6 months ago, I think those are pretty dramatically
They're
different.
different and they're all bad. But I think weirdly, if my partner was in love with someone, but choosing to be with me, like still wanted me,
Yeah.
but fell in love with someone, I actually understand that more than like you made you didn't. You're
Because you don't want to fuck a stranger.
Well, it's just like you're so horny that you decided to put this all at risk for nothing.
Yeah.
Like, I'd rather you put it at risk because there's something really happening.
Interesting.
Like,
Yeah.
you're
Not
so
me. I'd be the-
flippant
I'd
that
be
you're
the
just like, I'll just go fuck this person, knowing like
Well,
for
because
no
it's
reason.
kind of like it doesn't mean anything to me. It's
I
not
know,
a threat
but-
to us because I'm not even going to think about it again.
But it is a threat because if I found out, I might be like, bye. Like if it's,
I
if
know
you're
what you're
willing
saying.
to, yeah,
You're risking me.
for
You'd
something you don't
prefer-
even care about.
Right.
That's so, like, to me, that's
a super
so little
valid
regard.
It's a super valid perspective for your side of it.
Yeah.
And then I think a very valid perspective on the other side is like, this doesn't mean anything. This has nothing to do with us. It was one night. I'll never see the person again.
Yeah. Anyway.
Anyhow.
Okay. Well, I don't think we have time to do my second story, so we'll wait till next week.
No. What's your second story?
No, because
Why?
we don't have time. I'll save my story for next time. And I have another one to add to my list.
Oh my God. Do you need a pen? Rob!
Rob, add David Chang to the list.
David Chang. Okay.
That's a delicious ad.
Yeah. Okay. Now this is for Susan Morrison.
Okay.
Lorne Michaels' book.
Yeah.
So fun. I thought this was such a fun episode. I loved learning about Lorne.
Lorne.
Spy Magazine. Spy was a satirical monthly magazine published from 1986 to 1988. Based in New York City, it was founded by Kurt Anderson and E. Graydon Carter. Now, Graydon Carter is of the moment
Oh.
because he was the editor of Vanity Fair from 92 to 2017. He was the longtime editor at Vanity Fair, and he has a memoir out right now, or a book, called When the Going Was Good, An Editor's Adventures During the Last Golden Age of Magazines. It's a ding, ding, ding because he's been on this book tour and Monica Lewinsky interviewed him for something.
Oh, she did?
Yeah.
For
Ding,
the
ding,
book,
ding.
presumably?
Yeah, but I meant like at something.
Oh, okay. At an event.
An event. And we just had her on.
Yes, we did.
Okay. Was Bill Hader's previous job to SNL a PA on Iron Chef? He worked as an assistant editor on Iron Chef America just before he was invited to work on SNL.
You just clacked your dancers, and I liked it.
I did.
Why do I like your clack and not mine?
But do I do that a lot, or did I?
Are we just hyper aware, or
Yeah.
or is it?
I don't hear it from you.
Really? So maybe I just caught it. You infiltrated.
You know what's so funny about Rob is like he has all these secret things I don't want to say upset about.
No, he
that
just
has to deal with.
notices.
And it's not until I ask him. I mean, this is kind of a nice personality type. Like he doesn't tell me like, hey man, you're clacking like a fucking
Yeah.
Choo-choo train.
A choo-choo train. Is that a good clack example?
Click-a-click-a-clack.
You sound like Gregory Hines crossing the dining room floor to go to the salad bar.
Oh, wow.
You tap dancer.
Yeah. That was good.
Thank you. I would have never known it's driving him nuts, this clacking as he's involved with all the technical aspects. But I got to wait till ask him.
It's not driving me nuts.
You're just
hear
aware of it.
Yeah.
Well, out of 10 is like you're pulling your hair out when you hear it, and 0 is you love it, I guess.
No, I don't. It doesn't bug me. It's just if I think it's an audio issue.
Yeah.
And
So
I'm
you
checking
notice it during
You think there's like pops in the microphone or something?
Well, sometimes if an edit's not smooth, it will create a pop, but sometimes it's just your teeth.
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't notice it in the edit, actually, weirdly.
I think it's usually after the mix and master that it'll...
Before I get it?
After you get it.
I find it interesting that I don't notice it because if it's happening after me, the cleanup, then I'm really surprised because I notice
Everything.
lot.
I know,
I notice
I'm your
everything.
big brother. You knows anything.
All of us, I
Yeah.
notice like the little tick. So I'm really surprised I haven't caught that. When did Belushi die? He died in 1982, and he was 33 years old, just like Jesus and Chris Farley. Ding, ding, ding.
Ding, ding, ding.
It was just Easter.
Yeah. I'm like, which could have been anything.
Yeah. And the Pope, Jesus. The Pope has passed.
The Pope passed. Yeah. We lost.
I wonder how long it will take for the new Pope.
They're going to do that whole thing we
The
just
conclave,
watched.
I
The
know.
conclave.
It really was timely. Okay, Conan's show moved to 12:05.
Yeah.
And it was 12:05.
I heard on the radio today that Conan won Best Podcaster Award at the Webbies.
Oh, exciting.
Yes,
Congrats,
I was
Conan.
happy for him and mad.
Yeah, obviously I'm mad.
Yeah.
Okay, the 5 Timers SNL Club. Okay, I'm going to read them.
Sound like a threat.
Alec Baldwin, 17 times.
Fuck.
Steve Martin, 16 times. John Goodman, 13 times. Buck Henry, 10 times. Tom Hanks, 10 times. Chevy Chase, 8 times. Christopher Walken, 7 times. Elliot Gould, 6 times. Danny DeVito, 6 times. Drew Barrymore, 6 times. Tina Fey, 6 times. Scarlett Johansson, 6 times. John Mulaney, 6 times. Candice Bergen, 5 times. Bill Murray, 5 times. Justin Timberlake, 5 times. Ben Affleck, 5 times. Melissa McCarthy, 5 times. Dwayne Johnson, 5 times. Wow. Jonah Hill, 5 times. Will Ferrell, 5 times. Paul Rudd, 5 times.
I would have thought Will would be higher.
Me too. Woody Harrelson, 5 times. Emma Stone, 5 times. Kristen Wiig, 5 times. Martin Short, 5 times. And then there's an honorary member, Paul Simon, 4 times. It says, Paul shouldn't technically be a member. He's only hosted 4 times, but he got his membership card for his 5th appearance on the show as a musical guest.
Okay.
Okay.
Lenient.
Another honorary member, Jack White.
Okay.
0 times. 0 times hosting.
5 times guest. 5
they
times
get
music.
jackets. That's cool. Musical guest.
We should make Sedaris a jacket.
Oh my God, we should. He's not the most frequent SNL musical guest. That's Dave Grohl.
Good for Dave Grohl.
16 episodes.
Now that's who I want.
Yeah, I want him too.
I want him bad. I want you, Dave Grohl. I want you so bad.
That's it.
I just want to get in your pants.
Oh, no. I forgot. I haven't seen him in a while.
Because he's been hiding in the woods
Ew.
where he lives in a fort.
Oh, he's friends with that guy?
Oslakacher. He's my best friend. I love him, but I lost him. Some murder.
What?
He's in prison.
Oh.
But
When you
Dave Grohl's a rock and roll star, and he rips the drums and he rips the guitar.
When you say
And he was in my favorite band, Nirvana.
when he
Smells like Teen Spirit in here.
Oh my God, he doesn't let me talk. I really find it frustrating. Okay.
He stopped so you can talk.
Well, now I forgot. It was so long. Oh yeah. When you say we lost him to murder, that sounds like he was murdered.
I know. But he went away from the tree fort to go to prison because of a murder. Yeah.
That's really
And in
fun.
Frito's
That's actually
mind-
really funny.
Thank you. Once in a while.
He was lost to murder because he murdered.
We lost him to murder. But he's not a murderer. He just murdered.
He's a murderer. Although I feel bad for him.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, you can feel bad
He's
for him.
a murderer?
Yeah.
I
not
thought
Frito.
No.
Frito's just a pervert. He loves everything he's never tried.
He's one step away from murdering. But I thought the other guy from your class, he murdered. They
the
murdered
two of them.
together.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And one of them, I believe, was intellectually challenged.
Yes. And the other one might have been too because
Toxic.
of toxic chemicals from the
That was
carpet.
my take. I wrote an article about it.
Okay, great. You wrote an article? What'd you say?
I wrote an article.
You did?
One of my hobbies in my 20s is I would write fake news articles, and then I would mail them home to my friends.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
funny.
Like in my famous mugging thing, I wrote an article about that with pictures.
Oh.
And then when
Was it on the computer?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. On my compact computer, desktop computer.
Did you use like Photoshop to get the pictures?
I
in?
have, I'm sure, in my milk crate of the things I've written. They're in there.
Oh, wow.
And then I wrote a long article about Aaron, and I was blaming all of it on
Not Aaron Weekly.
Stinchcomb.
Yeah, Aaron
And you hated.
Stinchcomb.
It's so weird. I mean, you're even protective of a murderer.
Well, he had a bad life. I'm not protective of him in that I do think he should be in jail.
Yeah.
But I feel sorry for him
That's
that
my
he had a
take.
bad
I don't know
life.
why I'm switching.
I
You're right.
know.
I
You
know. It's probably because my personal history that the kid couldn't stop trying to fight me. I mean, I have some,
Yeah,
someone
I
tried to
know.
fight you over and over again. You made fun of their last name. I would probably give you a pass.
You'd like that. I know.
And it was right there for the taking. The name is almost already the bad name.
What is the bad name?
Shitcomb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's probably added to everyone calling him that probably didn't help.
Well, I doubt anyone said that to his face. I'm not sure he knew.
It always makes its way back.
I don't know. I really don't know who would have the gall to. I don't know. Let's move on.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, well, that's it.
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I love you.
I do want to say his name once as Frito.
All right.
Aaron Sitcom is. Well, I'll stop there because I don't want to declare him as anything.
Also,
I love you.
He kind of got it wrong. He said it a little weird.
Aaron Sitcom.
Oh, he's saying the bad way.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right.
Good night.
Bye.